Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Chen Ming completed the reception process that Higu had arranged for him. The two of them came to Chen Ming's research institute together. There is a special reception room here. It didn't take long in total. After all, Higu's visit this time was not for official business, but more personal. In addition, Chen Ming really had no experience in receiving people, so everything was kept simple. As soon as he entered the reception room, without waiting for Chen Ming to make him tea or anything, Higu placed the briefcase he had been carrying on the table. "Come and see. This is what you want." He opened the briefcase. There were two miniature life support tanks wrapped in black sponges in the briefcase. Through the shell made of a transparent material on the surface of the life support tank, you can see that each of the two life support tanks has a pure white artificial spiritual awakening nerve that is more than 10 centimeters thick and as thick as a little finger. In addition to the spiritual awakening nerve, there is also a square instrument in the briefcase. This should be the device that Higu mentioned before to detect the spiritual properties of psychics. This instrument can select appropriate psychic materials to make suitable weapons or other things according to the psychic properties of the psychic after the psychic has detected the results. Chen Ming still needs this. After all, he has come into contact with so many psychic objects of different types and properties, but he still hasn't found one that is completely suitable for him. Higu took out the two life-sustaining tanks from the box and placed them steadily on the coffee table. At the same time, he pointed to the side of the tank where a bunch of small words were written and said, "The instructions are here. If you want to take out the chilling nerve temporarily, remember to put it back at the end. Leaving it outside will kill the chilling nerve." In addition, this small tank is equipped with a filter device. Just replace it regularly with the universal nutrient solution that can be bought anywhere outside. It is not a problem to store it for 10 days or half a month using this method. If you want to store it for a longer time, you have to use special nutrient solution. I should also remember it at the branch. You can definitely get it if you think of a way. If you have any other problems, just call me when the time comes. Okay. Chen Ming picked up a storage tank and held it in front of him, examining it carefully. The chilling nerve in the life-sustaining storage tank is the same as the chilling nerve that Yuhui wanted to use on him before. They are all thick and fat, with some nerve forks at the tip, looking like a big white worm. However, the one Higu gave him now is obviously more docile than the chilling nerve that Yuhui wanted to use on him before. Yuhui's spiritual awakening nerve looked like it was going to eat his spiritual awakening nerve. It must have been specially cultivated and was very fierce. In other words, if Chen Ming wanted to use the spiritual awakening nerve given by Higu to try to extract the spiritual awakening nerves of several psychics he captured, it should also be cultivated to a certain extent. Speaking of which, I remember that when I was with Yuhui before, the equipment they used to store spiritual awakening nerves was different from this one. Higu, who was taking another instrument out of the box, asked back, "What are they like?" "Green and black columnar things, like a medicine bottle, with a little bit of curvature, just the kind that can be held in the hand." "Oh, I remember that kind of thing is left by that destroyed civilization. Our jar is a replica of the original." "Is that so?" Chen Ming responded casually. While chatting with Higu about what he had seen and heard before with Yuhui, he continued to thoroughly probe his mental power into the life support tank, carefully sensing the status of the two spiritual awakening nerves in the tank. After a while, he put the tank back into the box. He didn't plan to move the two spiritual awakening nerves for the time being. He planned to keep them for the two psychic captives he would have later, although he could completely absorb the two spiritual awakening nerves. But he discovered a problem in his perception just now. His mental power is currently at a special critical point. This is because his mental power has grown to its current limit. Another reason is that after reaching the limit, his mental power came into contact with the scarlet dimension, which led to the refinement of his mental power. Absorbing other ordinary spiritual awakening nerves will instead cause his mental power state to decrease. It's like his mental power growth is filling a big pit with soil. There is soil everywhere, various spiritual stones and auxiliary tools to assist in the training of mental power, and the boat spirit is the shovel used by Chen Ming to fill the soil. Originally, filling the soil shovel by shovel, and tamping it shovel by shovel was pretty good. Chen Ming could occasionally get a large piece of soil that was already compacted and similar to the soil he used to fill the pit from other people and throw it directly into his own pit, which was to absorb the spiritual awakening nerve. But at the same time, when he came into contact with the Scarlet Dimension, the Scarlet Dimension was like a steamroller that rolled over the pit he filled, pressing the pit that looked solid and filled by manpower down by dozens of centimeters. The roller master left a business card, asking Chen Ming to call him if he needed anything. He even taught Chen Ming how to use a shovel to compact the soil to the same degree as if it had been rolled over by a roller. So at this time, the soil packed by others was different from the soil compacted by Chen Ming. These packed soils could no longer be easily transformed into his soil, so even if he absorbed the spiritual enlightenment nerve now, the spiritual enlightenment nerve could not help him break through his current limit. Of course, this was not the key point. The key point was that the roller master, that is, the Scarlet Dimension, taught Chen Ming not only how to compact the soil, but also taught Chen Ming more. The amount of Chen Ming's mental power had long exceeded the normal limit. His earth pit had long been filled up, and even overflowed a lot from the surface, but he just couldn't find the place to go to the next pit to fill. In theory, there was no problem with quantitative change causing qualitative change, because Chen Ming had been improving by relying on pure mental power growth before. But the situation is very different now. Chen Ming felt that what he needed now was not the quantity of spiritual power, nor the quality of spiritual power. His quantity had exceeded the level of qualitative change, and the quality had become strong enough after being rolled by the steamroller. But he did not break through that limit, and he still lacked an opportunity. So although absorbing the spiritual awakening nerves was still useful, it was not very meaningful, at least for now. Just put the spiritual awakening nerves aside for now. Higu saw Chen Ming put the spiritual awakening nerves back into the suitcase and confirmed, "How are the things?" Chen Ming replied, "Very good. I have prepared the things here." The main thing in this transaction between him and Higu was these two spiritual awakening nerves, and the remaining testing equipment and 3,000 contribution points were all extras. If the main thing was obtained, then Chen Ming would definitely have to pay for the delivery. Chen Ming's spiritual energy was activated, clearing an area in the reception room. He waved his hand and transformed the metal liquid that appeared in the void into a whole piece of spiritual energy metal material. It was square, and the volume was less than 1 meter square. The moment this piece of psychic metal landed, the whole room felt as if it sank a little. Oh! Higu usually looked quite steady, but after seeing such a large piece of psychic metal, he couldn't suppress his emotions. He touched the psychic metal as if he had seen some treasure. After stroking this treasure in his eyes for a while, Higu turned to Chen Ming and asked, "Is this Baiyun steel?" Yes. Such a large piece of psychic metal was all made by Yin Xiong. And because of the way Yin Xiong's own psychic energy is realized, the physical properties of the psychic metal he absorbs are the properties of the metal he finally produces. Therefore, Chen Ming usually doesn't give Yin Xiong ordinary steel. Ordinary psychic metal and high-grade or special-grade psychic metal are at different levels. So Chen Ming finally chose Baiyun steel for Yin Xiong to absorb in large quantities. The reason why he didn't choose other metal materials is also very simple. His Yuhui fleet is about to start the third jump on the road of pioneering abroad. In the exploration of the surrounding galaxies during the first 2 jumps, Yuhui and his team found many places of certain value, such as the mining sites of various basic, advanced, and even special ores. These places have built development bases under brilliant planning, collected the easy-to-mine minerals, and then continuously transported them to the fleet in front with the special nature of Chen Ming's spiritual power. For example, Baiyun steel, a metal ore that is usually located in the mountainous areas of a planet and often has larger veins exposed on the surface, is the best source of advanced metals for Chen Ming. The output of Baiyun steel will only increase, not decrease. Even all other advanced minerals combined may not be as much as the Baiyun steel in Chen Ming's hands. It is no wonder that the value of Baiyun steel is so much worse than other advanced metals. This advanced metal is too easy to mine, but difficult to use, and it is difficult to make alloy materials with suitable cost performance. That is why this situation has led to this. Although a large part of the surface and shallow Baiyun steel mined from various planets will be used to expand Chen Ming's own mechanical family. But there is still a lot left, which can be fed to Yin Xiong without any problem. As for the higher-grade metal, although there is some, it can indeed be fed to Yin Xiong to make higher-grade psychic metal. But Chen Ming felt that after he sold this large piece of Baiyun steel psychic metal to the Psychic Research Institute of the 14th Legion, he could slow down a bit and wait for the price to rise. After staring at the large piece of Baiyun steel psychic metal for a long time, Higu finally looked away reluctantly. Chen Ming asked appropriately, "Do you need me to help you transport it out?" "Thank you." Chen Ming activated his psychic energy again and transformed a whole piece of Baiyun steel psychic alloy into liquid metal, which flowed out of the laboratory and was sent to the shuttle that brought Higu to his dome. After confirming that there was no overload, Chen Ming took a photo of the shuttle and showed it to Higu. A few minutes later, Higu was quite satisfied with Chen Ming's debugging of the instrument for detecting psychic properties and handed it to Chen Ming. Input mental power into the instrument, record your psychic fluctuations, inject a small amount of blood, and there should be results after 5 minutes after starting the device. The device is not connected to the internet, and the chip inside has recorded all the psychic properties recorded in the Imperial database so far for retrieval. After starting, you can see your psychic properties, and the results should come out quickly. Then I will step aside for a while. Higu stood up and prepared to leave the reception room temporarily. But before he walked out of the reception room, he suddenly turned around, pointed at the instrument in Chen Ming's hand and said, "You can press the buttons next to it in order to destroy the data recorded inside, or just physically destroy it." Chen Ming nodded. After Higu left, he pressed the start button on the instrument. Another wave of psychic energy flowed out of the instrument immediately, and it entangled with Chen Ming's mental power and psychic energy waves. Only 2 or 3 lines of text appeared on the display screen of the instrument. The first line is the psychic nature that matches Chen Ming's compatibility. In short, it is a database that will tell the user where there are suitable psychic materials that are recorded and can be obtained. Chen Ming just wanted to take a closer look. But the next moment, the text on the display screen changed and became a new psychic nature. Before Chen Ming could react, he saw that the display screen changed again. And it's still going on. The results on the display kept changing, and each result lasted no more than half a second, as if it couldn't stop at all. Is it because he couldn't find the psychic nature that matches him? That's not right. Chen Ming waited for another 2 minutes with doubts, but the situation did not change. The content on the display was still changing, and it didn't provide Chen Ming with a reasonable result at all. Chen Ming had no choice but to open the door of the reception room. Higu, who was looking down at the terminal, immediately turned around and asked, "Is it done?" "No." Higu's question was just for fun. He really didn't expect Chen Ming to not do it well. "What's wrong?" Chen Ming handed the instrument back and said, "Take a look." Higu took it and frowned at the words that kept jumping on it. Chen Ming asked, "Is it because the instrument has not found a psychic property that matches me?" "It shouldn't be." Higu denied Chen Ming's idea and said, "Because when the database was not perfect before, there were many undiscovered suitable psychic properties when detecting psychic properties. So when this happens, there will be a prompt, and generally multiple similar properties will be displayed together for easy comparison and speculation. Even if there is no similar one, it shouldn't jump around like it is now. In this case, is the equipment broken?" In silence, Chen Ming suddenly had a feeling that the instrument was not broken, but his problem. It should be as he had guessed before. As a mentally rampaging entity, a chaotic existence, how could he have a compatible psychic nature? And think about it carefully. Since there are one or several psychic materials with good compatibility for psychics, it is normal to have psychic materials with poor compatibility. But Chen Ming has come into contact with so many psychic-related things of different natures, and it seems that there is really no one that has a clear poor compatibility with him. This seems to explain the problem to a certain extent. Although Chen Ming also suspected that it was a problem with the prosthesis. But the data stored in the device, the mental power, is his. The psychic fluctuations are his. The blood is exactly the same as his original body, not to mention the genes. So he ruled out the possibility that the prosthesis caused the instrument to have problems. In this case, Chen Ming felt that he could use the one with the strongest psychic fluctuations, and he didn't need to consider the issue of compatibility at all. If he really wanted to find a suitable compatibility, he might find it in the Scarlet Dimension. Of course, this is just Chen Ming's guess. His use of the Scarlet Dimension is to close his senses and transmit other things. On the premise of retaining his own consciousness, he can only enter the Scarlet Dimension for half a second. What he wants to do in the Scarlet Dimension is definitely not something he can do now. Just think about it. In Chen Ming's silence, Higu reached out and used the universal recovery method of electronic equipment on the instrument, which was to tap it a few times. But this method obviously didn't work. The display screen of the instrument kept jumping between various results. It should be that the instrument is broken. Higu said, I took it out from the warehouse. Those instruments and equipment may have been produced for several years. They may have been broken. I will notify you to prepare another one, and then have someone prepare a compensation for the damaged equipment for you. Compensation? The kind of 10 times compensation for fakes? Haha. Higu laughed awkwardly and said, there shouldn't be any, but I can give it to you. Although he knew that it might not be a problem with the instrument, Chen Ming couldn't tell the truth, so he silently accepted the benefit. 3,000 contribution points had been credited before. Although there was a little episode in this transaction, the main transaction had been completed. It didn't matter if there was no result in the follow-up. Anyway, he already had the answer in his heart. The two did not dwell on the instrument for too long. After Higu handed the instrument to Chen Ming and Chen Ming turned it into a piece of scrap metal in front of Higu, the two ended the formal topic and talked about their own things. Although Higu and Chen Ming had not known each other for too long and had not met too many times, but both of them were researchers in a certain technical field and had many common topics in research, there would always be something to talk about. After a few words of casual chat, Higu suddenly asked Chen Ming, do you have any plans next? Plans? Of course Chen Ming had plans. After the matter in Kamo Star Domain was over, he needed to quickly familiarize himself with the effect of his psychic power being strengthened by the power of the Scarlet Dimension, thoroughly digest the unique knowledge, and improve his abilities. He had never felt a sense of crisis before, but since he knew the level division of psychics and he was still at level 5, this sense of crisis came up. Especially after Whooping tried to sneak attack Hu-E. After discovering the psychic gap between level 5 and level 6 psychics, Chen Ming's mentality could not help but change a little. Although sneak attacks can make up for the gap between psychics to a certain extent, and even give Chen Ming a certain possibility to kill Hu-E, he can't always have the opportunity to sneak attacks. He doesn't want someone to come to him for trouble one day, and he can't do anything. He can't completely get rid of the Empire. So if he doesn't make some preparations, he will face such a day sooner or later. He must digest the power obtained from the Scarlet Dimension as soon as possible, improve himself, and prepare for the next contact with the Scarlet Dimension. Anyway, Master Steamroller, the Scarlet Dimension has left him a nameplate, and the closed crack in his consciousness space is the key to the Scarlet Dimension. Since he can't hide or avoid it, he'd better take the initiative to contact it. At least this way he is taking the initiative to do things, instead of being forced to do things. Prepared actions are always more appropriate than unprepared and hasty responses. Moreover, contacting the Scarlet Dimension is not without benefits. Everything in the Scarlet Dimension is made up of knowledge. The longer he can stay in the Scarlet Dimension, the more power he can get. Moreover, he has been stuck at the limit of controlling 9 cruisers at the same time for a long time. It is extremely important to continue to break through. Chen Ming can feel that when he breaks through to the point where he can control 10 cruisers at the same time, it is the moment when his psychic power will have another huge improvement. Even if he cannot break through further, he must at least be able to recall the entire Yuhui fleet that is active outside at any time. In this way, he will have the ability to share a share in the war of the mechanical race. In the process of digesting knowledge and becoming stronger, what Chen Ming has to do in the fake body of the 14th Legion is to continue to study the various special devices given by the Legion. The research progress of the catalytic core is slower than he expected before, but the gains from the catalytic core and the value of the catalytic core itself are more than he imagined before. In addition to research, it is to continue to attend classes. His psychic power has been improving, and his thinking speed has been increasing. His learning efficiency is getting higher and higher. His current learning speed has changed dramatically compared to the speed when he just started learning with Bai Quan. Even Chang Xinghai mentioned this when teaching Chen Ming, saying that he needed to increase Chen Ming's learning volume every day. Chen Ming didn't mind. Anyway, these military command knowledge could help him gain an advantage in the war. In addition, Chen Ming estimated that there should be another reconnaissance mission in a while, allowing Chen Ming to personally control the spacecraft to get close to the mechanical race. Bai Quan promised before, and he should not break his promise. As for Chen Ming's other prosthesis, Enwupiing, he has to cooperate with the president first, and he can go to Odin after the president is done. The Odin star field is closer to Garakobi Bainu, and it is even more impossible to be separated from the next mechanical war. Chen Ming needs to let Enwupiing integrate into Odin as soon as possible, get familiar with Odin as soon as possible, and find a suitable excuse for Enwupiing to participate in the mechanical war. As I said before, Enwupiing can help Chen Ming do a lot of things that he can't do personally. As for the main body, planning for development is still planning for development, and learning about spacecraft knowledge is still learning about spacecraft knowledge. His current study of cruisers is also coming to an end. Give Chen Ming another month or so, and he will be able to thoroughly master the basic knowledge of cruiser design and modification. At that time, whether to follow Chaofan to further learn the higher-level battleship technology or to study cruiser technology horizontally, it is all possible. In addition to these, there are two important things on the main body side. One is that he is going to take the two awakening nerves he just got, the awakening nerve extractor stored by Yu Hui, and secretly take the awakening nerve cultivation technology from Yu Hui to conduct the awakening nerve extraction experiment. The other is that the Queen of Worms has to start migrating. The mechanical race that was on the same planet with the Queen of Worms has been taken away by Chen Ming, and a new planet closer to Yu Hui, which is farther away from the Empire, has been found for stationing. But the migration of the Queen of Worms is very troublesome, because the Queen of Worms has turned almost the entire planet into a worm nest. Of course, it only looks like this. In fact, except for the place where the Queen of Worms first built her nest, only a part close to the surface has become a worm nest. Not the entire planet has been hollowed out. But it is also outrageous enough. Such a large number makes it difficult for the Zerg to migrate and avoid the troops of the Empire that wage war against the mechanical race. Therefore, Chen Ming fed the Queen of Worms a defender some time ago. He wants the Queen of Worms to evolve into a cruiser-class biological battleship. And now the evolution of the Queen of Worms is nearing its end. It is almost successful. Now there is only one key thing left, the jump engine. Although Chen Ming said to Nyo Xian that the Queen of Worms had already figured out the jump engine, but in fact, the jump ability he used was the hyperspace channel jump that he developed himself. Only after the Queen of Worms has figured it out, the real biomass jump engine can be applied to Enwupiing. Enwupiing's own ability will be greatly improved. To be honest, Enwupiing's fake body is strong, very strong. It even made Chen Ming have some ideas to make similar changes to himself. Of course, it is still in the conceptual stage. Enwupiing can do this because the Queen of Worms can create a bunch of fake bodies similar to Chen Ming for experiments. He must be cautious when doing this on himself. He has to operate on 3 lines, which is a bit of a headache. But it's not a big problem. Problems are meant to be solved. He has had headaches more than once or twice. In which time was it not solved by him? Chen Ming already had a complete plan in his mind at this time. Of course, plans are plans, ideas are ideas, and he can't tell Higu everything. So when faced with Higu's question about his plans, Chen Ming's answer was quite implicit. Now I still have to wait. Aren't we going to fight a war in a while? I have a lot of ideas that I want to realize during the war. You mean you have more free time recently, right? I still have to do what I should do, such as my research tasks, and training my psychic power and mental strength. Higu felt a little strange. According to common sense, whether it is an independent research institute or a research institute under a certain organization, the research tasks assigned often have a very loose research period, especially for Chen Ming's research institute. After all, Chen Ming is a very special person, and some of the tasks assigned to Chen Ming have even been handled by their headquarters Psychic Research Institute. He knows even more clearly that there is no time limit for Chen Ming at all. Sometimes it is even normal to deliberately delay the progress of research and cheat some funds. Chen Ming's main job is also a psychic, not a research institute, so the research should not have much impact on Chen Ming. And the training of mental power and psychic effects is a daily task for psychics. Even if psychics who have undergone systematic learning need to meditate every day, it will not take up much time. Some psychics can go through the daily meditation process when they sleep. For psychics like Chen Ming who came from a society, training should be to exhaust mental power, not to mention the time consumed. So Higu thought about it and translated Chen Ming's words into that he was really idle and could only train his mental power. He continued to say according to Chen Ming's idle meaning, "Have you heard about the Empire recruiting people recently?" Higu said it was recruiting people, but Chen Ming immediately thought of the chat between the psychics of the society and Hui that he heard from Whooping yesterday. "I heard that they are looking for psychics to fight, right?" "Yes, this is actually a signal. The Empire should take action on psychics soon." Higu looked like he was going to tell Chen Ming some gossip, and Chen Ming cooperated and asked, "What action?" As a result, Higu spread his hands as if he didn't know either and said, "At present, we only know that there will be action, but we are not sure what kind of action it will be, but it is not a bad thing after all. But I heard that the Empire's action this time needs more psychics to participate, the more the better. The more you contribute, the better it is for us psychics as a whole." Seeing Chen Ming frowned, Higu said with understanding, "It sounds strange, but if the information I know is correct, it is indeed the case. Then do you want me to participate too? I have this idea, and I have been cooperating with the research of the mechanical race. Or do you want me to go to the front line?" What Chen Ming had heard from the Psychic Association before was that the Empire was going to form a special team around the recruited psychics, so he asked this question. However, Higu immediately denied it and said, "That's not the case. There are always psychics who can play a greater role in the rear than in the front line. The contribution made by psychics in the war of the mechanical race is not only on the front line. I just want to tell you this news. After all, this is a news that will benefit all psychics. Don't worry about your contribution being shared by others. The contributions made by all psychics can bring absolute benefits to themselves." Chen Ming stared at Higu for a while, feeling that Higu must know a lot about what he said about the Empire's actions against psychics in the future. But he just hid it, as if he couldn't say it out. Anyway, they were just chatting casually now, and Chen Ming didn't ask much. "Okay, then at least I know it, and I will do what I should do." Chen Ming responded without saying much. However, Higu brought up a new topic again. "Do you have time to go to the headquarters with me?" "Headquarters? What for?" "To see Bai Quan." Higu said something that surprised Chen Ming. "Bai Quan should not be able to come back here in a short time. You should be able to feel it, right?" "I know." Chen Ming nodded and said, "He came back to the headquarters because of the assassination of the Black Fog Psychic in Zhujiang. Logically, he should have been back when the Kamo Star Domain incident started. But he didn't, so there must be something delaying him. There is no sign of the 14th Legion intervening in Kamo, so I guess the matter of the mechanical race can only delay him. It just so happens that the headquarters has to accept the Imperial order to take over the Binyu Star Domain, right? The matter in the Binyu Star Domain seems to be related to Kamo, but in fact it is related to the mechanical race. It should be the matter of the mechanical race." Higu was somewhat surprised that Chen Ming could get a lot of information that he had just learned not long ago while staying at the headquarters, and Chen Ming could accurately guess the truth based on the information he obtained. However, judging from Chen Ming's previous performance, it was not too surprising that he could do these things. Higu coughed lightly and said, "You guessed right. It was indeed the matter of the mechanical war that delayed Bai Quan's trip. You should also know that our 14th Corps has served as a scout and pioneer of the mechanical war since the establishment of the branch here. Bai Quan, as the actual controller of the branch, is also a lieutenant general who fought on the battlefield. He has many tasks, so he should not be able to come back before the war officially enters the initial combat stage. But he has a lot to talk to you in person, Is that so? Chen Ming asked uncertainly. Is there no one at the headquarters who is worried about my psychic power? Of course, but there will be fewer people around me who are worried about you, and I can ignore them after fewer people. Well, let me think about it. Chen Ming did not respond in a hurry, because he couldn't tell whether it was Bai Quan who asked Higu to come and say this, or whether Higu said these words himself. Chen Ming and Bai Quan have always been in contact, but not as frequently as before. But at least in the last conversation, Bai Quan never said anything about asking him to go to the headquarters. Of course, Chen Ming didn't say that Higu was lying, and Bai Quan might not be able to explain everything clearly on the phone. It's just that Chen Ming needs to think about it. While thinking about it, he also asked Higu a question related to what he just mentioned. Is there any new information about the mechanical war from Higu? Although Bai Quan still sent him daily reports every day after going to the headquarters. But the content of the report can't explain everything clearly. There will always be some things that Chen Ming can't see. And after Bai Quan left temporarily, Chen Ming didn't have a suitable reason to get in touch with some things related to the mechanical war. He had only a few months of experience in the army and only learned a few months of military knowledge. No one would tell him military news at all. Even Jing Xian, the current deputy of the branch, would not be idle to inform Chen Ming of military news. So Chen Ming urgently needed some intelligence related to these aspects. Although Higu was also a researcher in the rear, Higu had always shown a very friendly attitude from before, so Chen Ming felt that he could at least know some of the situation on the front line from Higu. Higu decided to tell Chen Ming the news he wanted to know without much thought. Although his main purpose of coming here this time was actually just to trade with Chen Ming, he was the only one who was qualified to deliver 2 spiritual awakening nerves worth 10,000 contribution points. And his secondary purpose was just to help Bai Quan pass a message. After the things were delivered, the transaction was completed, and the message was delivered, he could actually leave. But he didn't leave, and even revealed some news when chatting with Chen Ming in the middle. Part of it was because the situation of the Empire's future actions against psychics really depended on the performance of psychics in the mechanical war. Chen Ming, the best psychic in the 14th Legion in mechanical research and a researcher, will definitely be an important target for the Empire to judge the performance of psychics. He knows a lot, but these a lot are also limited and cannot be revealed casually. So he is a little secretive. And the other part of the reason why he chatted with Chen Ming about those things was to get closer to Chen Ming. Therefore, the question raised by Chen Ming now is not a big deal in his opinion. He does know some news about this from other people. He organized his words a little and said, "Before, our army has cooperated with the nearby war zone to complete the preliminary investigation of the information around the mechanical race star field and determine the defense force deployed by the mechanical race on the border. After the investigation of the outer area is almost complete, it is the second stage of investigation. We will try to infiltrate the mechanical race's star field and obtain more detailed intelligence. Start from the rear of the mechanical race. Their defense is relatively empty. I remember that this was the information you provided at the beginning?" Yes. Chen Ming went there to plunder the mechanical race's units so that his own mechanical race hive thinking network could reach the level of self-production of new consciousness, so he happened to know a lot and told Bai Quan the news. And Higu had actually known all the news he just said. He needed updated information. Higu seemed to have sensed Chen Ming's thoughts and continued. While we were infiltrating the interior of the mechanical race star field, we didn't stop in other places. The reconnaissance troops are still expanding their reconnaissance of the surrounding star fields to ensure the combat environment at that time. War is not limited to the star field. The surrounding areas of the star field are also of top priority. Also, we have to confirm the status of Yuhui to avoid being taken advantage of by Yuhui when we are at war with the mechanical race. When Higu said this about Yuhui, Chen Ming interrupted and said, "Yuhui has indeed been silent for a long time, but I don't think they should be able to make any noise." Chen Ming would not say much about things related to Yuhui and Chen Ming's own psychic power. After all, only he knew the situation of Yuhui in the Yuhui star field, and the Yuhui star field was also another trump card known to others besides the Zerg. But he could give a hint and ensure that there would be no problem. That's good. After getting Chen Ming's reply, Higu didn't mind saying more. This kind of communication with feedback was more comfortable than him simply showing goodwill to Chen Ming. Moreover, Chen Ming's response also made him see that Chen Ming was a smart man, and a smart man who was willing to continue to communicate with him in depth. According to our recent investigation, we found that the mechanical race has changed a lot compared to the past. Although the combat effectiveness of the mechanical race in the past was indeed strong and could block the Empire's external expansion, but in fact, when the mechanical race blocked the road, the Empire could continue to fight if it wanted to. There are various complicated reasons why the Empire did not do so, which I will not go into detail. In short, compared to the past, the combat effectiveness of the mechanical race has increased a lot. They have not completely developed over the years, they have been improving. For example, the changes in the main weapons of their main battleships. Higu took out a special terminal from his body and went back to the coffee table in the reception room with Chen Ming, and placed the terminal flat on the coffee table. Then he projected a projection of a mechanical battleship, that is, the mechanical mothership. Chen Ming immediately took a closer look and found that this three-dimensional projection had extremely high accuracy. Even if his face was almost close to it, he could still see many details on the battleship clearly. Higu patted Chen Ming's shoulder and asked Chen Ming to step back a little. At the same time, he waved his hand on the projection and aimed the front of the battleship at the two of them. The battleships of the mechanical race often have different appearances. For example, this battleship with two main weapons is a relatively common model. By the way, do you know what the main weapons of the mechanical race are? If Chen Ming knew, it would save him some effort to explain. Yes. Chen Ming gave a decisive answer. The main weapon of the mechanical race is the spine cannon, a modular main weapon divided into 3 modules: spine base, spine amplifier, and spine cannon head. He locked his eyes on the position of the main gun in front of the mothership projection and asked, "Have the mechanical race come up with a new type of cannon head?" Chen Ming asked this question because he knew about the mechanical race mothership and the main weapons of the mechanical race from the simulation. In the simulation, he had seen 5 types of ridge cannons: laser, restraint laser, plasma, disassembler, and soul killer. The first 3 are easy to understand. They are the types of weapons. Although Chen Ming has never seen the disassembler, according to the data he obtained before. This weapon is also an energy weapon, and it is an energy beam weapon, similar to the tachyon spear. However, it does not launch a torrent of particles, but a molecular bond that can weaken and destroy the microscopic structure of the target. It is not effective against shields, but its ability to break armor and hulls is terrifying. The Soul Killer is a psychic weapon used by the mechanical family's mothership in the last simulation under the guidance of Chen Ming's opponent to attack the headquarters in Chen Ming's simulation. It can directly destroy the spirit and will of all living beings on the entire planet. Higu deliberately turned the image of the mothership to the front, most likely to explain the situation of the main weapon. And Higu did nod and reached out to adjust it again. The gun heads of 2 of the ridge cannons on the projection have changed. The gun head of one of the ridge cannons has changed from the original gun head that directly fired lasers to a gun head similar to an electromagnetic weapon. This seems to be a kinetic weapon. Doesn't the ridge weapon rely on the ridge amplifier to amplify the weapon's energy? How can there be a kinetic weapon? Higu had no way to explain it, so he could only say, "This is the new change I mentioned." The mechanical race should be trying to use energy to convert into electromagnetic force, and finally convert it into the acceleration of the live bullet to create weapons. It can't be said to be unreasonable, but this is indeed a more special type of weapon. As far as I know, among the main weapons, only the weapons of this mechanical family are of the real fire type. All other main weapons are energy weapons. I wonder how they will perform on the battlefield. It seems that the Empire has only investigated some superficial changes of the mechanical family and has not yet conducted in-depth research. Chen Ming did not continue to ask in depth. Continue to look at another gun head. The changes of another ridge gun head are more outrageous. It has changed from the original, very regular mechanized structure to a weapon that is obviously made of metal materials, but gives people a unique texture. There is no barrel at the gun head, only a few cracks like shark gills. The strangeness of the appearance is comparable to that of the Soul Killer. Chen Ming feels that the mechanical family has a feature when designing weapons. That is, as long as the appearance of the standard mechanical structure is a normal type of weapon. And once a special shape appears, such as the Soul Killer, which is similar to the top of a worm with tentacles, and the shark gill shape that Higu showed him now, they are all psychic weapons. An ordinary ridge peak cannon head and a psychic ridge peak cannon head. Is this the change of the mechanical race? There is more. Higu debugged the terminal again and said, some new units have appeared in the mechanical race, such as this one. The terminal projected a dog-like mechanical body. The moment Chen Ming saw the mechanical body, he said, this thing is not right. Higu asked in confusion, I haven't said anything yet. Why is it wrong? How did you see it? The design of the mechanical race, at least the design of the ground units, is all related to insects, without exception. There is definitely something wrong with the sudden appearance of a dog. There is really no problem. Higu said, this special mechanical race individual appeared on a planet that the mechanical race has just begun to colonize. It is not a mass-produced individual, but a special individual. It has psychic power. Psychic power? Yes. Higu confirmed, it is psychic power. It and some other similar animal-shaped mechanical races were recorded when they were clearing the native species of that planet, and the images of them using psychic power were recorded at the same time. The terminal immediately began to project a whole video. Watching the special mechanical races on the screen move extremely flexibly, constantly releasing psychic power, as if they were not machines, but a completely living thing. Chen Ming couldn't help but say, I don't think they are made, but rather transformed from psychic creatures. This is also the speculation of many scientists. Higu ended the projection of the video and said, these mechanical individuals are special combat units of the mechanical race and may be used by the mechanical race for some special operations. The psychic power in them will be a nightmare for all ordinary soldiers. Chen Ming asked, so this is why the Empire summoned psychics? To deal with these psychics of the mechanical race? It's only part of the reason. The main reason is that the Empire really needs to dispatch psychics and let psychics participate in large-scale wars. Well, speaking of large-scale wars in the past, there has never been does the participation of the spiritual capacity be involved? Of course, but the previous war, mainly by winning warship artillery and various technologies to win victory. Only when it is very urgent can there be a top spiritual person who dispatched the beheading plan and destroy the machinery of the mechanical family, instead of betting on the enemy than to bet on one person. In the weapon war, test the advantages and disadvantages of the spirituality in the war. In short, the mechanic race now has new main weapons and new special combat units, which must be taken seriously. These two are just the easiest to see. Others, such as the optimization of various ship designs and the improvement of the mechanic race's combat capabilities, are all areas that need attention. That's about all I know. So, have you thought about the question just now? Do you want to go to the headquarters with me? Chen Ming looked at Higu, and after thinking for a while, he gave his answer, you can go. But I have to go somewhere else first. It should take you some time to return to the headquarters, right? Wait for me for a while. Just one day. That's no problem. I'll pick you up then. The two continued to chat for a long time. Until the interest in chatting was over, Higu stood up and prepared to leave. Chen Ming also stood up and prepared to see Higu off. But just before Higu left, he suddenly turned his head and looked at Chen Ming, with a special look in his eyes as if he was an experienced person. Chen Ming felt something was wrong and asked, what's wrong? Nothing. Higu shook his head, with a strange smile on his face. Higu's strange expression at the end did not affect Chen Ming's actions. He only needed to prepare a little, and then he could set off to finish his own work. After he finished his own work, he could follow Higu directly to the headquarters of the 14th Corps. But Chen Ming actually had nothing to prepare. Anyway, he could make most of the things he needed when he went out, and the main thing was to arrange the work in the laboratory before leaving. This was also simple. There were still many things that could be tested for the special catalyst produced by the catalytic core he got before. Even if he went out for 10 days or half a month, it would definitely not be possible to test them all. He just needed to do this for the researchers in the laboratory. After quickly arranging the work, early the next morning, Chen Ming drove away from the 14th Corps branch without taking anything with him in a frigate he made by hand. No one stopped him at all, and no one even asked him where he was going. It was completely different from the situation when he first came. The 14th Corps just let him go. But this was not a bad thing. No restrictions were better than restrictions. After the spaceship entered the hyperspace, Chen Ming directly started the hyperspace channel jump engine and set the target location, the pirate space station. He prefers to meet everyone he knows before going on a long trip, to avoid himself or someone he knows suddenly dying and not being able to see them. The spaceship arrived at the destination quickly. It landed steadily at the dock. As soon as Chen Ming entered the maintenance plant, he saw the bald man with a few newcomers teaching something. As soon as the bald man noticed Chen Ming, he immediately came over with a few newcomers to say hello. The maintenance plant still maintains a scale of about 10 people. There is still no robot, and basically all kinds of fixed equipment are used to do things, which is enough. After learning from the bald man that the only surviving newcomer Chen Ming had personally led before was out on a mission today, Chen Ming did not stay in the maintenance plant any longer and went all the way to the city in the center of the space station. Arrived at the bar that Lao Wu often went to. The security guard at the door opened the door for him respectfully as always. Old Wu was still sitting in the corner of the bar as before. Although it was early in the morning, Old Wu was definitely not here because he suddenly got up early in the morning and was very diligent, but because he had not slept all night. You can tell from Old Wu's red eyes. But Old Wu's mental state seemed okay, and he happened to be talking on the phone about something serious, so there should be no problem. Chen Ming did not disturb him directly, but asked the bartender for a glass of orange juice and a cup of refreshing tea and walked to Old Wu's side. Before he got close, Chen Ming heard Lao Wu's angry voice on the phone. The price has increased? How much? 10%? Are you robbing me? A helpless voice came from the terminal. It has increased by 10% now, and it may increase more in the future. I really can't supply you with the previous price. Don't talk nonsense. I really don't want to talk nonsense. The price of raw materials has already started to increase last month. I should have increased the price last month. But I thought it was just a price fluctuation, and you are an old customer, so I continued to give you the original price for a month. But this month the price of raw materials has not only not dropped, but has increased. I really can't continue at that price. I have no choice. If you don't believe me, go check it yourself. It's not like I don't know those things. TSK. Wait for me to ask first, and then I'll tell you. Lao Wu hung up the phone. Chen Ming happened to sit next to him. After handing the tea to Old Wu, he said, "What's going on? I heard you say that the price of something has increased." Old Wu took a sip of tea and said with a depressed look, "Yes, the prices of various Old Bye. Bye. I can't just tell you that it's the 14th Corps when I talk to you about this kind of thing." "That's right. Then the supplier has raised the price, so you want to ask me?" "Yes, I was going to call you, but I didn't expect you to come just in time. So what do you say?" "There's really nothing we can do about the price increase." Chen Ming didn't have much to say, as the price increase was within his expectations. It can be increased up to 20%. If it's higher, forget it. I'll find other people to use their connections to change the supply channel. If other manufacturers want to raise prices, it's the same. They can all raise the price a little bit, no problem. Okay. Old Wu raised his glass and drank with Chen Ming. After finishing his drink, Chen Ming whispered, "A war is about to begin." Old Wu filled another glass of wine for Chen Ming and himself without changing his expression, looked around and asked, "What's going on?" "There's going to be a war with the mechanical tribe. Although our gallo mainly borders Yuhui, there is also a place bordering the mechanical tribe. Sooner or later, this side will become the front line." Old Wu lowered his head slightly and thought for a while, then said, "I was wondering why prices have risen so fast recently, so why did you come here this time?" "Talk to you, because I need to go out for a while next, and I may not be able to take care of this side. If the war breaks out, no one can say what the scale will be. How about that? So I want you, and the factory director to go back to the star field inside to avoid the limelight for a while. Old Wu suddenly leaned back on the sofa and shook his head. No, it's convenient for me to do things here. Old Wu's intelligence network and his colony are all built nearby. I can't go anywhere else. Old Lu may be able to go out to avoid the limelight, but I definitely can't. Seeing this, Chen Ming didn't force it, but just asked, "Then do you take the terminal I gave you before?" Old Wu reached into his pocket and took out the terminal given by Chen Ming, shaking it in front of Chen Ming. "Okay, then you take this one with you." Chen Ming reached out to Old Wu, and some metal liquid appeared out of thin air, gradually building a very ordinary men's necklace and a wristband. Old Wu took the two things and asked, "What is this?" The necklace can detect your heartbeat and carotid artery pulsation. The wristband can detect pulse and has an alarm device. In addition to what Chen Ming said, this wristband actually has a device that Chen Ming learned from the president to detect the surrounding psychic fluctuations. As long as any offensive psychic fluctuations are detected, the wristband will automatically pop up a protective film made of psychic metal to protect the wearer. I hope you don't need to use it. I'll send another set to the factory director later. By the way, you have to carry the terminal with you. These things will be the cornerstone for Chen Ming to provide support when Old Wu encounters danger in the future. Old Wu put on the two things that Chen Ming gave him to protect him on the spot and asked, "Are there any more?" "No, just these three things." "Okay." Old Wu tidied himself up and hid the necklace and wristband. Chen Ming nodded with satisfaction and asked, "By the way, has the boss come back?" "No, the hardware store is still closed, and I don't know when he will come back." That's it. Chen Ming's time was a bit tight this time. After all, Higu was still waiting for him. So Chen Ming didn't talk much with Lao Wu and got up and left the bar. After going to the factory manager again, chatting for a while, and giving the factory manager the same thing, Chen Ming returned to the port. Standing in front of his spaceship, he took out the terminal and called the boss. The call was quickly connected. The boss's voice came from inside. "Xiaoming, how come you have time to call me?" "I just don't have anything to do recently, and I have to go to the headquarters of the 14th Corps next, which may take some time. I wanted to find you at the space station, but you were not there, so I called you." "Oh, then I'm still at Hongamo, and I have some things to do here." Chen Ming asked, "Is it still about Kayamo?" "The matter with Kayamo is over, and I've finished what I need to do. The president wants to see me for something, and I should be back in 2 days." "You're doing well there. Being able to go to the headquarters means that the 14th Corps has begun to treat you as one of their own." "Well, it was Higu from the Psychic Research Institute who invited me there." "Psychic Research Institute?" The boss was a little surprised when he heard the name. "It's your Psychic Research Institute. Have you almost finished sending them?" "That's not the case. Higu just invited me to come over. The main thing is the next war. My psychic power can still be developed. It's not over yet." TSK, TSK, TSK. The boss sighed. "Your psychic power is outrageous. It can affect both machinery and biology. I don't know how you do it." Chen Ming said very modestly, "In fact, I feel that my psychic power is still the earliest form, still based on controlling spacecraft, but I think biological spacecraft is also spacecraft." "Stop, don't say it. I won't believe it even if you say it. I still want to see what new changes your psychic power will have in the future. In fact, I am also thinking about how to continue to develop psychic power, but there is no good direction." Chen Ming's words hinted at the boss to give some guidance. However, the boss did not do as Chen Ming wished. "I can't give you any advice on this. Your psychic power development level has long exceeded the level I imagined at the beginning. At the beginning, I can teach you some basics, but I can no longer give you experience in the future. You have to know that a psychic power is best understood by the psychic who has it, and only the psychic himself can best develop his psychic power. So it all depends on your own development in the future. Unless you go the official route, that's too early." Chen Mingning had just learned something new from the Scarlet Dimension and was waiting to use it to develop psychic power. How could he give up the upper limit of his psychic power development now? "I think I can continue to develop it and then learn it systematically when it's almost done. It seems that I can only find a way myself." Well, I wish you good luck. I look forward to seeing the day when you can fully develop psychic power. After chatting for a few minutes, the phone was hung up. The boss suddenly said to Chen Ming, "By the way, you said you went to the headquarters because of the mechanical war, right?" "Yes." The boss was silent for a while and said, "Well, forget it, it's okay. I'll hang up." Ah. Chen Ming was stunned when he heard the boss's words, but the terminal only had the busy tone of the phone being hung up. Chen Ming was full of questions at this time. Before, Higu also gave an inexplicable smile when he talked about going to the headquarters at the end of the conversation. The boss also ended with a strange question when he asked about going to the headquarters. "What does this mean? I don't understand." "Forget it." Chen Ming didn't get too entangled. He found Higu in the address book and contacted him. "I'm ready here." "Then let's go. The spaceship will be here soon." A few minutes later, Chen Ming's spaceship docked with the destroyer brought by Higu in the star system of the pirate space station. Chen Ming met Higu again. After a brief conversation, Higu personally arranged a room for Chen Ming. It should take a long time to arrive at the destination next. Chen Ming was about to go back to the room to lie down for a while. But before he did so, he found a problem. The destroyer he was riding on was heading in the wrong direction after entering the hyperspace. This was not the direction to the headquarters of the 14th Legion. So Chen Ming simply asked Higu in front of him, "Where are we going?" "Bainu Star Region." "Bainu?" "Yes, we go there and take the Star Gate back to the headquarters." Chen Ming was a little surprised and pleasantly surprised. It was definitely good news for him to be able to touch the Star Gate. It was his first time to try to ride a Star Gate. If he had the opportunity to get close to the Stargate, he might be able to obtain the entire three-dimensional image of the Stargate and even further control a Stargate. Of course, this was just a thought. Although the 14th Legion was not so vigilant against him now, other places were different. It was impossible for him to have the opportunity to encounter a facility as important to the Empire as the Stargate. Of course, even going to Bainu would take time. So Chen Ming went into the room that Higu arranged for him to lie down, and then turned his attention to Enwupiing. At this time, the ship carrying Enwupiing had stopped at a space station connected to the colony on the planet by a space elevator. It was already morning. Although no one had come to Enwupiing to ask about it or urge him, it should be soon. So Chen Ming made the final preparations. He used the spiritual energy that he had deconstructed to transmit a spiritual awakening nerve to Enwupiing and implanted it into his brain. Chen Ming also asked the Queen of Insects to help assimilate this spiritual awakening nerve. In order to avoid being seen that the spiritual awakening nerve and Enwupiing were not compatible. Then the Queen of Insects ate the spiritual awakening nerve. Just like she had eaten the condensed spiritual energy source that Chen Ming had originally intended to use to build Enwupiing's heart. Of course, the Queen of Insects also created a new spiritual awakening nerve as before. Eating is also a way for the Queen of Insects to learn, so Chen Ming didn't say anything. Although this was a bit of a drain on the Queen of Insects, creating a spiritual awakening nerve consumed a considerable amount of mental energy and a huge amount of biomass. But at least the result is good. The new awakening nerves created by the Queen of Insects after absorbing the complete awakening nerves look no different from ordinary awakening nerves. Of course, Chen Ming is referring to the awakening nerves sold by various forces with psychic research institutes. That is, the kind that Bai Quan personally certified as having a 0% probability of awakening psychic power after implantation. The real awakening nerves that can be used for implantation are not so easy to create. Although Chen Ming always has a feeling that if he gives the Queen of Insects more time, or feeds her a few more awakening nerves, she can really create them. But time is what Enwupiing lacks now, and Chen Ming doesn't have many awakening nerves, so it's better not to do something risky. Moreover, the ordinary spiritual awakening nerves that the Queen of Insects can now create are sufficient for camouflage. After the Queen of Insects implanted the spiritual awakening nerve, emitting its spiritual energy fluctuations into Enwupiing's brain again. This spiritual awakening nerve, which is of the same origin as Enwupiing's spiritual energy, was quickly transformed by the fused spiritual energy fluctuations of Enwupiing's individual and completely merged with his brain. Although this spiritual awakening nerve is still just a showpiece, it looks absolutely fine. Even Chen Ming's other prosthesis was taken advantage of by him to make a fake spiritual awakening nerve. And this spiritual awakening nerve implanted in another prosthesis was infected with Chen Ming's spiritual energy fluctuations by the Queen of Insects, and it perfectly matched the prosthesis without any deviation. Everything is fine. Half an hour later, as expected by Chen Ming, someone knocked on An Whooping's door. As soon as he controlled An Whooping to open the door, he saw Liang Fei and Yo Xian standing at the door. "Are we going to start?" "Yes." An Whooping nodded, followed Yo Xian off the ship, signed the port registration form, and boarded a shuttle. The shuttle did not take An Whooping to the nearest city. Instead, it landed in the suburbs some distance away from the city. There is a huge manor here, which is the base of the association. All psychics are guys who can make a lot of noise. Places like the suburbs with open space, and few people are really good. After getting off the shuttle, An Whooping continued to follow Yo Xian into the hospital of the base. Although the association has always adhered to the style of allowing psychics to improve naturally, it must have all the necessary detection devices. But Chen Ming still has to pretend. Before lying in the instrument prepared by the association, An Whooping asked Yo Xian beside him, "I heard that the Psychic Society has always been a laissez-faire attitude towards psychics, allowing psychics to develop on their own and not conducting such physical examinations to avoid affecting the development of psychics." "Yes, if you are worried that knowing these things about the nature of your psychic power will affect you, we can also not provide you with reports in this regard. You can still continue to develop freely. Even if we have some of your data, we will never interfere." That's it. An Whooping did not ask any more questions and lay directly in the equipment. The inspection process was very long. It was not until 5 or 6 hours later that An Whooping was finally able to see the light of day again. And Yo Xian also brought good news. All the tests on An Whooping passed, confirming that everything An Whooping said was fine. At the same time, the inspection of the heart-convergent spirit pearl that An Whooping left behind was almost done, and it can also be confirmed that psychics can obtain the psychic effects of others through the heart-convergent spirit pearl. A face can't prove anything in this era, so Chen Ming can completely get rid of the suspicion of being involved with Wujing again. At this point, Yo Xian also formally invited An Whooping on behalf of the president. Liang Fei happened to be next to him and explained the nature of the association and the possibility of joining two forces at the same time for An Whooping, who probably didn't know the true situation of the association. Then An Whooping agreed. Liang Fei then also issued a formal invitation to An Whooping. The result was of course the same. Chen Ming also learned at this time that Liang Fei's real name was Liang Fei. Li Weiqi, who was still lying in the hospital, was named Li Wei. To be honest, Chen Ming was a little embarrassed when he heard these two names. Why did the two psychics in the Odin star field also use the same pseudonyms as him? Although it was a little embarrassing, it also made Chen Ming feel a little closer to them. And after the test, Chen Ming didn't stay here for too long, because Liang Fei hurriedly took him away from the hospital in the association's base, and he wanted to go back to the Odin star field. Chen Ming asked in confusion, "Are you in such a hurry to go back? The medical conditions here should be better than Odin, right?" "It's better, but not much worse. The main thing is that there is something in Odin that requires us to go back." "What is it?" "Prepare for the mechanical war." "War?" An Whooping's identity obviously does not allow him to be exposed to the mechanical war, so Liang Fei explained the basic background to Chen Ming. Then he said, "Although our Out-on Selenium drum is not adjacent to the star field of the mechanical race, and there are still 1 or 2 edge star fields between us and the mechanical race star field, the distance is still too close to escape, and the war is very close to us. Then I heard from my superiors that psychics can participate in this war action. You may not know it, but psychics were restricted in previous wars. This action allows psychics to join. Maybe there is some special meaning. So I have to go back." Chen Ming has heard from many people that the Empire will have some special actions against psychics in the mechanical race war. It doesn't matter if I hear one more. And it's good this way. He was thinking about how An Whooping could get involved in the war of the mechanical race. It seems that as long as he follows Odin's arrangement, It won't take long for Enwhooping to run to the mechanical race star field. Enwhooping shouldn't have to think too much in the short term. Chen Ming can pay more attention to the prosthesis of the 14th Legion. Just after Enwhooping followed Liang Fei out of the base, Neo Xian, who was still at the base, looked at the shadow of the shuttle in the sky and said to the terminal in his hand that was contacting the president, "The person has left and went to Odin. I will synchronize the test results to you immediately. Is there anything worth mentioning?" "Yes." Neo Xian looked at the terminal and said, "We still haven't found anything valuable in the shadow at the position of his heart. His heart hides his secrets." The president said, "Everyone has secrets. What about others?" "His genes are also special. Even in the human form, he is not a pure human. And after he enters the mutant state, his genes will also undergo new changes. It can be said that before and after the mutation, they are almost two different creatures, but neither is human. It is not the genes that determine whether a person is a human, but his consciousness. Is there anything else?" "No, there is no problem." "Then this is also a good result. We can trust in Enwhooping." 2 days later, the destroyer Chen Ming was arrived at the Bennu star field, and from the coordinates of the spacecraft's hyperspace channel data, it will reach the capital of the star field in another hour. At this moment, the door of the room was suddenly knocked. Chen Ming walked over and opened the door. Higu stood at the door and said, "We are almost there. Be prepared. It will be a bit bumpy when entering the Stargate." "Bumpy?" Chen Ming has taken the jump engine jump countless times without any bumps. Why is it bumpy when he reaches the more technologically advanced Stargate? He asked with doubts, "What is the principle of the Stargate? Why is it bumpy?" Higu patiently explained to Chen Ming, "The operating principle is quite simple, just the same as the operating principle of the wormhole. So the spacecraft will be pulled by the tidal force when passing through, and there will be bumps. At that time, we have to turn off the spacecraft's gravity simulating device. Remember to be mentally prepared in advance and pack up some things that will fly around." Wormhole technology? Chen Ming knew this a long time ago, but it was not confirmed until now, and he has not yet come into contact with the level of technology. Although his psychic power can achieve similar effects, if you want to rely on non-psychic means to create the effect of wormholes, it is really something that only top scientists can do. Wait. If the Empire's Stargate technology is imitated from wormholes, then do natural wormholes exist? Of course, there were even many wormholes in the Empire before, but you shouldn't see them. Why? Higu turned his head and looked out the porthole on the side. Although there was nothing to see there except the deep purple background of hyperspace, Higu's eyes seemed to be able to penetrate hyperspace and see the Stargate of the capital of Bennu. Because all the wormholes that have been discovered, their core singularities, have all become the core of the Stargate we built. This is human power, not the power of psychics. Higu said in a calm tone what Chen Ming thought was extremely exaggerated. Being able to control the power of the wormhole means that the Empire at least has the same level of power. In other words, the battleship is definitely not the most powerful means of the Empire. The Empire must have a higher level of power. Chen Ming followed what Higu said and thought about it casually, but soon he gathered his thoughts back and asked, "Then I remember that every star field has such a Stargate, which means that when the Empire builds a new star field, it is not only about choosing a site, but also about the Stargate, right?" Higu said, "Yes, the Stargate is the fastest way of action in this era. Star fields without Stargates may be out of the control of the Empire." There were many reasons why the Empire did not continue to expand abroad, and the temporary inability to find a suitable wormhole was one of the reasons. Chen Ming asked again, "So now you have found a suitable wormhole?" "It has been found a long time ago, and the singularity has been obtained. After all, it is difficult to slow down the pace of development and fully develop the..." When Chen Ming heard this, he immediately considered whether its colony also needed a Stargate. If the Stargate can be directly connected to the Empire, the benefits are unimaginable. But problems will also follow. Speaking of which, the Stargate needs to be opened in both directions, right? Yes, otherwise there would be no need for Zhuijing to occupy the Stargate in Kamo Star region. Okay, then Chen Ming is fine. It seems that stargates are still very necessary. It is time to find a way to obtain stargate technology for the colony. When Chen Ming thought of the difficulty, he suddenly had a headache again. However, he had been able to obtain the design blueprints of the main battleship and a whole giant dock before, so it was not absolutely hopeless to obtain a Stargate design. Chen Ming once again retracted his divergent thoughts and returned to the topic just now. So what else did the Empire stop before, besides the lack of wormhole singularity? Chen Ming has learned about the pioneering era of the Empire from many people. It was an era of striving and forging ahead. As for the reason why this era gradually disappeared, the answers of several people Chen Ming knew were different, and he didn't know what Higu's answer would be. There are many reasons to stop it, but there is only one main reason. Higu pointed a finger at Chen Ming. Do you know the concept of the longest flight distance of a scheduled spacecraft? Chen Ming understood what Higu said, but this longest flight distance of a scheduled spacecraft must be a special term, not the superficial meaning he understood. So Chen Ming answered directly, I don't know. It doesn't matter if you don't know. Anyway, this concept means that a spaceship uses available objective means to navigate, such as hyperspace or phase space. And the capabilities of the spaceship itself, such as the jump engine, cannot be counted. The distance a spaceship travels in a year is the specific meaning of this maximum flight distance of a regular spaceship. Put the starting point of this distance at the center of the Empire, and the end of this distance is the limit range of the Empire's theoretical maximum border. Seeing that Chen Ming couldn't understand the connection between the two, Higu added, it means that if a rebellion or foreign invasion breaks out on the border of the Empire, then within a year, the Empire's fleet has no way to, if we cannot reach the border from the capital star region by direct navigation, then there is no way to govern such a place. The administrative management capacity of the Empire is limited, and the things that can be handled are also limited. With the expansion of the Empire's borders, the territory of the entire Empire is growing exponentially. If something happens, politicians will not be allowed to hold meetings there. 1 year is the maximum limit. This is one of the reasons why the Empire's development is slow. Chen Ming roughly understood the meaning, but he still had a question. Administrative management capabilities will change, right? Yes, so this regular 1-year period will also change. The Empire's communication means administrative management capabilities and administrative management capabilities will also change. The more developed the power is, the longer this time can be delayed. Just like this 1 year was tacitly determined in the pioneering era, now the situation is definitely different. I don't know how long it can be, but it will definitely be more. Chen Ming suddenly thought of a point and asked, when was the technology of the Stargate developed? Higu answered very familiarly, a long time ago, in the pioneering era. I know what you mean. Stargates, as a device that can be used for ultra-long distance transmission, almost connect the entire Empire and can greatly expand the distance of spacecraft navigation. But the use of Stargates is not without restrictions. Activating the Stargate has some effects on the singularity inside the Stargate. The singularity needs to be maintained and cannot be used without limit. It is not an objective thing, but a human creation, so it cannot be considered to have completely increased the maximum navigation distance of regular spacecraft. Therefore, this factor cannot be counted in. After so many years of sedimentation, the Empire has been studying sociological theories, and the improvement of administrative management capabilities is no longer what it used to be. With the breakthrough of antimatter technology, the speed of spacecraft navigation has also been greatly improved, and the distance that spacecraft can travel within a period of time has also changed dramatically. The Empire is finally able to continue to explore. Chen Ming completely understood how the Empire's pioneering era came to a halt. Then he couldn't help but ask another question. Is it just because of the antimatter technology that the Empire decided to restart the development again? Of course not. Higu said with certainty. Just like there were many influences when the development era ended, there are many aspects of influence on the Empire's intention to restart the development era this time. I won't say much about the internal contradictions and internal problems of the Empire and the sequelae of dimensional infection. I will talk about the 14th Legion, which is more closely related to us. The 14th Legion is currently facing the main force of Yuhui as a single legion, and most of the other legions in the entire empire have only participated in small-scale, low-intensity wars. These legions are not fighting and preparing for war, but are providing for the elderly, or the empire pays for their elderly care. Would you be happy if it were you? This is one of the reasons that affect the empire's redevelopment. It is impossible for a legion that is supported by money to eat free rice and do nothing. Then your two technologies, mainly the hyperspace channel technology. Chen Ming immediately recalled that when he handed over the hyperspace jump technology and energy crystal technology to Baiquan before, it seemed that it was not through Higu and the Psychic Research Institute. Only the results of the research mission on the relics of another civilization assigned by the later Legion were handed over to the Psychic Research Institute. However, it was normal for Higu to know about these things. Chen Ming did not delve too deeply into it, but just asked, "What's wrong with this technology?" Well, this technology has been known by many people, but it has only been tested in our Legion before. The effect is very good. Recently, this engine has been adapted and optimized for different types of spacecraft and has begun to be promoted from our Legion to other places. But the speed of transmission is definitely not as fast as antimatter technology. Antimatter technology is a truly epic-making technology, and it is also the technology that truly promotes the Empire to restart the development process. But I remember that you also have some patents for antimatter technology, right? And it seems that you stole it from Yuhui. The antimatter technology developed by Yuhui allowed this technology to overcome the final difficulty. The Empire's ability to return to the road of development is also closely related to you. And to be honest, your technology is not bad. The hyperspace channel jump engine consumes less energy and is simpler to maintain than ordinary jump engines. Although there are limitations, this limitation is nothing in front of the Empire. And even if your technology is slower than antimatter technology, I feel that your technology has the opportunity to be fully equipped faster than antimatter technology. Chen Ming asked again, "Why is this?" Because the nature of antimatter technology itself tends to be high precision and advanced, it is always difficult to install such technology. And the Empire cannot start equipping the entire Empire with antimatter technology without being familiar with it. In addition, you know very well that the antimatter technology was first obtained from Yuhui, and Yuhui has not yet shown the ability to have antimatter technology that can be applied to various fields. That is to say, once our antimatter technology is taken away by Yuhui, it is very likely that they can immediately come up with the same technology. In the mechanical race has also not used antimatter technology. But as one of the legacies of another civilization, it is very likely that they are not incapable of using it, but have lost some of their technology. Once our antimatter technology is obtained by them, the situation may be the same as Yuhui's. This is indeed a more troublesome point. It is also the news that Chen Ming occasionally hears from some scientists who study antimatter when he cares about the patent fees for his antimatter technology. But if you are worried that your weapons will be picked up and used, it is not the right thing to do not bring them to the battlefield. Higu said in response to Chen Ming's question, "This is certainly not the right thing to do, so I just said that it is impossible to start deploying them so early. If our antimatter technology is acquired by Yuhui or the mechanical race too early, then our advantage of being one step ahead will be gone. So the actual deployment of antimatter technology must be in the transition stage from the early to the middle stage after the start of the mechanical race war. There will be a large number of ship losses in this stage, and there will definitely be opportunities for deployment. All the applications of antimatter technology before this are for testing. That's why I think your technology will be deployed faster than antimatter technology." Higu put forward his ideas with reason and evidence, and Chen Ming really had nothing to refute. There was no need to refute. After all, what Higu said was a disguised compliment to him. Then what about the energy crystal technology? Higu's face was a little embarrassed. He thought for a while before saying, "It's not my research direction. I don't know much, but I can tell you roughly the attitude of the Legion towards this technology. Your technology is indeed very promising and performs very well. As a new type of energy storage material, it is even better than the battery array of the main battleship. You should also be breeding and selecting suitable energy crystal crabs, right? The energy crystals sent over are also better than the batches. Ah. Chen Ming hesitated and said, Indeed. It's just that he is not doing eugenics, but the Queen has been selecting the individuals with the best crystal quality from those Zerg individuals that have been deeply repaired and optimized by Chen Ming and specialize in producing energy crystals. Then replicate on the basis of such individuals, and then slightly modify their genes for producing energy crystals, trying to find the most suitable Zerg individuals for producing energy crystals. Can the crystals sent over be bad? However, Higu immediately changed the subject and said, however, these energy crystals cannot be used as a technology to promote the development of the empire, and they are far less important than the previous two technologies. Although energy is also a very important part, there is a very critical issue, the output. Antimatter batteries are still under research, and it is not certain whether the effect can be different from your energy crystals. But as long as the research is successful, antimatter batteries can definitely be mass-produced. Then what about your energy crystals? Mass production is not as simple as building a factory. If a technology wants to be applied to the entire empire, it needs the support of the industrial colonies and industrial bases of the entire empire. You have currently built a planet as a breeding base for energy crystal crabs, but what can the output of a planet do? Even if a planet is breeding and producing, it can't keep up with the loss of the entire empire, and it may not be able to barely supply a legion. So the view of the legion is to directly digest all the energy crystals sent by you internally and use them all on the battleship to replace the battery array of the battleship. Anyway, our core has the ability to transform the main battleships. We have specially transformed models of offensive class and core class ships. This technology can be used and is very useful, but it is limited by your continued expansion, so forget it, unless you understand. Chen Ming also knew that it was a pipe dream for a worm nest on one planet to supply energy crystals to the entire empire. Higu's meaning was also very clear. As long as Chen Ming was willing to cooperate more deeply with the 14th Corps, he would directly hand over the cultivation of energy crystal crabs to the 14th Corps. In this way, although Chen Ming's share in the entire production process was reduced, he could make less money. But if the overall production scale is expanded, the final profit may be greater. The output of energy crystals? Chen Ming felt that he needed to think about it, because he felt that the Queen of Insects had the potential to support the consumption of energy crystals of an empire. Moreover, he and Higu just chatted before arriving at the Stargate, which was definitely not counted. So Chen Ming simply didn't continue to talk about this. Instead, he followed the topic of the battleship that Higu just mentioned and said, speaking of the modified battleship, I am quite interested in the Prometheus Mk.2 in Kamo Star region. Is there any news about it? Higu couldn't help but say, your thinking is a bit jumpy. Chen Ming said as if he was used to it. More than one person has said this to me, but I am like this. I talk about whatever I think of. So how about that battleship? But I am not studying this. Then there must be some basic data or something? Let me think. Higu thought seriously and said, the full name of the modified Prometheus class is the Prometheus Mk.2 Improved Fuel Transport Ship. The main weapon carried is different from the ordinary Prometheus class. It is a weapon called Lud's Light by Zhuajing's people. As Higu told the story, Chen Ming's mind immediately emerged again with the appearance of Prometheus that he had seen through his Yue fleet before. When Chen Ming's mind gradually sketched the appearance of Prometheus Mk.2 to the main gun, he suddenly realized a problem. I remember you said that the mechanical family has created a unique kinetic main weapon, right? That means the main weapon of this Mk.2 is not a kinetic weapon? When Chen Ming saw the new weapon before, he thought it was a kinetic weapon. Could it be that it is not? Higu admitted, yes, it is not kinetic. Although it looks like it, its weapon type should actually be classified as a missile weapon, that is, an explosive weapon. And this thing is quite special. Zhuajing's modification has converted the main gun into a disposable weapon. It can directly fire the main gun as a bomb with an extremely large equivalent. Ah! Although Higu explained it very clearly, Chen Ming still couldn't understand it. Higu also looked a little overwhelmed. Even if the main gun is fired, it is feasible in the calculation. However, in actual combat, the main battleship may need to rush forward to help the bomb resist some defensive firepower. It's outrageous, but it's very suitable for Zhuo Jing's weapons. The ultimate power is also very exaggerated. If it hits the continental shelf of a planet, it will be enough to destroy the entire planet's ecosystem. Fortunately, Zhuo Jing is finished, otherwise God knows what else they can come up with. Chen Ming was hesitant to speak. Higu was looking out the porthole and did not notice Chen Ming's abnormality. After thinking about it, Chen Ming still did not say much about his understanding and cognition of Zhuo Jing. The real brainwashed psychic of Zhuo Jing is still hiding in Zhuo Jing and the Empire. He still needs to find a suitable opportunity to tell the right person in the future. While Chen Ming and Higu were chatting, the destroyer Chen Ming was riding on was gradually approaching the capital of the Binyu star field. Then, Chen Ming found that in the hyperspace, in front of the ship he was riding on, there was a fleet approaching him. The familiar tattered armor and the modified spacecraft made Chen Ming immediately realize that they were encountering pirates. Just in Binyu starfield, just a stone's throw away from the capital of Bainu. This pirate fleet saw that they only had one destroyer and 4 escorting frigates and thought they were a soft persimmon that was easy to take advantage of, so they decided to come and cause trouble. Chen Ming had seen a lot of pirates, but it was the first time that Chen Ming saw pirates near the capital of a starfield. Even in the marginal starfields, such as Gallo, it is impossible for pirates to operate so openly near the capital. It can only be said that the situation in Bainu is chaotic. Pirates are frequent and management is chaotic. The elected interim government has close to zero management ability for lower-level departments and can't even manage the area near the capital. Zhuo Jing's legacy is really... Just after Chen Ming discovered something was wrong outside through the destroyer's sensors, Higu quickly learned from the captain of the destroyer that pirates were coming, and quickly shared it with Chen Ming. Then Chen Ming had a question. Didn't the 14th Corps take over Bainu? Hasn't it started yet? It should be soon. Higu responded and was about to communicate with the captain to deal with the pirates. Chen Ming had already started to create a storm-class ship out of thin air. The rainstorm that appeared out of nowhere near the destroyer immediately made the pirates who were ready to come and cause trouble realize that something was wrong. But they were originally heading towards Chen Ming, and there was no time to turn around. The 8 Terminator drones on the Rainstorm class became red meteors and rushed directly towards the pirate fleet. Immediately afterwards, 3 more waves of Terminator fighters appeared. A total of 24 fighters entered the extreme overload mode and flew towards them with a panic-inducing atmosphere for the pirates and crashed into their spacecraft. In less than 30 seconds, including the time the fighters flew over, a pirate fleet with more than 30 ships, including 3 destroyers, which was considered to be quite large, disappeared in hyperspace. Higu stopped contacting the captain just now. After confirming that Chen Ming had completely dealt with the matter, he couldn't help but say, "It's so fast." Chen Ming turned around and said, "I feel that if you do it directly, it won't be slow. But I am generally more accustomed to doing things in a way that is more like ordinary people." Higu picked up the terminal and said to the captain again, "No need to enter combat readiness. Connect to the hyperspace communication system and inform the nearest government." The nearest government? Oh, it's the capital of the star region. Just tell them that we are the 14th Corps. The captain quickly received a reply from the local government department. They will come to deal with things here later. That's fine. Let's go. Under Higu's order, the captain of the destroyer ignored the debris floating in the hyperspace and continued to move along the channel to the capital of the star region, and soon arrived at the predetermined location, started the hyperspace channel engine, and left the hyperspace. The destroyer and 4 escorting frigates appeared at the edge of the capital star system of the Binyu star region. Through the spacecraft sensors, Chen Ming could already see the Stargate inside the star system. The 5 spacecraft also reaccelerated and approached the inside of the star system. However, at this time, the Stargate was still calm and had not started. The starry sky on the other side could be seen through the ring frame. So the spacecraft did not approach the Stargate, but circled a little and circled to the capital star system of the Binyu star region, the space station on the colony orbit of the headquarters of the Bennu Star Region government. The spacecraft landed at the port of the space station. After landing, Chen Ming found that the situation here was slightly better than he had imagined. At least the entire space station was full of martial law security personnel, and various security measures were also filled throughout the space station. Even though Chen Ming and Higu stated their identities as the 14th Corps when they entered the port, they also ushered in a wave of random inspections after landing at the space station, and ushered in a second wave when the spacecraft was replenished later. It seems that the capital of the Bennu star field is not a place for outsiders to stay now. After the spacecraft was replenished and a simple inspection was carried out, the spacecraft set sail again, arrived near the Stargate, and stopped at the edge of the giant structure of the Stargate. And just when the spacecraft arrived, the long silent Stargate finally began to operate. Outside the dormitory, near the porthole on the outside of the spacecraft, Higu, who was looking at the Stargate, said to Chen Ming, who was also observing the specific structure of the Stargate next to him, "The time is just right." The device on the Stargate is constantly transmitting energy to the internal ring structure. I saw a layer of gorgeous mirror film starting from the inner circle of the ring structure to the center of the ring, like a sky curtain covering half of the universe in Chen Ming's eyes. Although I have seen the Stargate start several times from a distance, only at a close distance can I find how shocking this giant structure built by human power is. When the mirror film is completely gathered and completely covers the starry sky on the other side, the mirror surface, which had been absolutely calm, suddenly had ripples like the surface of water. The ripples on the surface of ordinary water were only a few meters or tens of meters long and then disappeared. The largest ripple on the open Stargate even had a range of tens of thousands of meters. But this ripple with a diameter of tens of thousands of meters only occupied 1/5 of the entire Stargate. And around this huge ripple, the number of other ripples of different sizes continued to increase, making the Stargate like a pond during a rainstorm. At the moment when the ripples reached their peak, the 14th Corps fleet appeared in the Stargate. 2 offensive-class and Corps-class ships that had been specially modified by the 14th Corps rushed out of the Stargate at the forefront of the fleet. And thousands of cruisers also led countless destroyer escort formations to fly out of the Stargate. The scale was huge, and the momentum was magnificent. Chen Ming suddenly realized that what Higu said before was soon, not what he thought, that the 14th Corps would soon increase its control over the Bennu Star region, but that the 14th Corps was finally coming. When the 14th Corps headquarters fleet arrived, the two of them could use the Stargate for a while. Chen Ming originally thought that the 14th Corps would send people to stabilize the situation first, but there is no problem. He had already felt the chaos in Bennu on the way. The temporary government of such a place that was deeply controlled by Zhujiang can only protect its own safety, and other places are out of reach. Only absolute force can completely suppress it. Waiting for the fleet to arrive before starting to control the Bennu star field is indeed the most stable way to choose. If the local patrol team fails to play a role during the period when the 14th Corps fleet arrives, it may indeed cause some additional civilian casualties. This is a choice made by others, and Chen Ming cannot change it. So there is nothing to say. At least the scene of the 14th Corps fleet emerging from the Stargate makes people feel very excited. Such a large fleet gave Chen Ming some goosebumps because of excitement. He will have such a day in the future, and he can also build an invincible fleet. Just as Chen Ming was staring at the 14th Corps fleet outside, Chen Ming's terminal suddenly rang. "Sorry." He said hello to Higu next to him, turned a corner in the corridor, took out the terminal, and answered the call. The terminal heard Chang Xinghai's usual greeting, "Hello, is Chen Ming there?" Chen Ming also said as usual, "I answered your call, and you asked me if I was there? What's the matter? I should have asked for leave yesterday, right?" Chang Xinghai said confidently, "Of course I know you asked for leave, but I also heard that you were coming to the headquarters." Yes, Higu from the Institute invited me." "Is that so? I was wondering why your background changed during class 2 days ago. Are you on the way?" "Yes, I'm about to enter the Stargate. I don't know how long it will take to fly after I get out." "So soon? What's wrong?" Chang Xinghai seemed to be hesitating about something. It's okay. I'm just thinking about what to do with the classes later. Uncle Bai has been very busy recently. Even if you come, he may not be able to help you with the classes. Are you going to come to me? Now it was Chen Ming's turn to hesitate and didn't know what to say. He thought carefully for a while before saying, I won't stay too long this time. I should go back in a few days. It's mainly about the war. Jialua is the front line. Oh. Chang Xinghai acted a little strange. Chen Ming knew the reason very well, but he didn't dare to say it directly. Because he still hadn't thought it through, or he hadn't thought about it since Bai Quan hinted at it last time. He had no experience at all, and he didn't know what to do at all. Chang Xinghai seemed to have noticed some of Chen Ming's thoughts, and her tone was mixed with complex emotions. Then let's do it. I'll be at the headquarters. Yeah, that's it. The phone was hung up. Chen Ming stood there and stared at the terminal for a while before putting it away and returning to the porthole. At this time, Higu looked at Chen Ming with a smile on his face, just like the previous 2 days. After all, Chen Ming did not deliberately walk far. With the hearing of psychics, even if he did not listen specifically, he could still hear clearly who Chen Ming was talking to just now. Now Chen Ming knew what Higu meant, but he did not show any expression in front of Higu. He asked as if nothing had happened, how long will it take to enter the Star Gate? Soon. The fleet at the headquarters will open the Star Gate to us in 20 minutes after it passes through, which is enough for us to pass. Chen Ming leaned against the porthole, watching the fleet of the 14th Legion arriving outside, but his thoughts had already flown away to who knows where. Higu suddenly came over and asked, What are you thinking about? Chen Ming shook his head and said nothing. Higu just patted him on the shoulder and said nothing. 10 minutes later, the huge fleet of the 14th Legion finally left the Stargate completely. A part of the fleet flew to the capital planet and took over the government departments. Another part of the fleet left the galaxy. They were going to take over the original Starfield army in the Bennu Starfield. And just after the Stargate lit up the signal light to allow the rest of the spacecraft to pass, some of the spacecraft that were originally parked at the edge of the Stargate and waiting immediately flew towards the Stargate. Of course, this also included the spaceship Chen Ming was riding now. The reminder sound on the spaceship kept reminding that the gravity simulating device was about to be shut down, asking passengers to find the nearest safety fence and secure themselves with seatbelts. Because there was a seatbelt next to the porthole, Chen Ming and Higu stayed where they were. After the last scan before passing through the Stargate, all the approaching spaceships entered the mirror of the Stargate. Chen Ming, who was looking out the porthole, suddenly had only darkness in his eyes. In the darkness, he could not see anything, but could only feel the spaceship vibrating constantly. Even though he was wearing a seatbelt, he was still a little uncomfortable. And because of the loss of vision, Chen Ming's other senses suddenly became sharper. A feeling of being pulled by some force filled his whole body. This made him slightly uncomfortable, but he soon got used to it. The vibration of the spaceship gradually subsided. However, Chen Ming waited for a while, but still did not see the light outside the spaceship relit, and time seemed to pass very slowly. Obviously, the subjective time on the side of the prosthesis in the Stargate had passed a long time, but at this time, the objective time on the main body outside the Empire had passed less than half a second. And then, just after the half second that had just passed, Chen Ming suddenly felt a force acting on him, pulling his consciousness. Once he was pulled out by this force, his consciousness seemed to fall into the abyss. This was Chen Ming's subconscious reaction at the first time. After all, after entering the Stargate, his eyes were dark and he could not see anything. In addition to the pitch-black vision, he couldn't even sense the voice of Higu who was so close. This situation was quite wrong. However, Chen Ming's danger perception psychic power did not give any sign of danger. It was completely different from when he was forcibly dragged into the scarlet dimension by the recipient, and the danger perception in his mind was ringing like a bell. He also clearly sensed this. This was very contradictory. Chen Ming didn't think that there was something wrong with his mind, but this feeling was extremely real. Moreover, the force that involved his mental power was still growing, making it more and more difficult for him to maintain his mental state. Although part of his consciousness on the prosthesis of the 14th Legion sank into this abyss where he didn't know whether it existed or not, and whether there was any fatal problem. But he continued to concentrate his mind and resist this strange power. His mental power was rapidly consumed? No, his mental power was not consumed. The feeling on the main body was very clear. His mental power had not changed except for a slight increase in daily consumption. It was the part of consciousness on the prosthesis in the Stargate that felt that its mental power was being consumed. The pulling force came from all directions, making him the center of all the forces pulling him. It was as if his consciousness was in the eye of a typhoon, and all corners of his consciousness were being blown by the force that was constantly pulling him, which gave him this illusion. Wait, eye of the typhoon vortex. Wormhole? Chen Ming probably understood where this power came from. But how are things like stargates and wormholes related to consciousness? And what about the inexplicable consumption of mental power that only exists in perception? Chen Ming didn't understand, but he still insisted on fighting against the power from the wormhole. But the pulling force became more and more chaotic and distorted. It seemed to tear his consciousness into a vortex. Chen Ming had to constantly distract himself while concentrating all his attention to control different parts of his consciousness to resist the pulling force in the opposite direction. But no matter how he resisted, this force was getting stronger and stronger, and it was becoming more and more difficult to resist. Part of Chen Ming's consciousness was becoming more and more exhausted. But fortunately, Chen Ming's main consciousness, that is, his body, was still outside the Stargate. So whenever his consciousness on the prosthesis could not bear the force in the Stargate, as long as this part of the consciousness temporarily returned to the body, the fatigue of being immersed in the Stargate would immediately dissipate. He could continue to fight wits and courage with that force vigorously, continuously resisting. Finally, Chen Ming found that the spaceship around him began to vibrate violently again. His eyes were no longer completely dark, and the starry sky appeared in front of him through the porthole again. Higu was still silently looking out the window beside him, and behind the spaceship he was riding was the Stargate with ripples. Through the surrounding starry sky, Chen Ming quickly determined his current location. He was now in a star field directly controlled by the 14th Legion, a star field directly named 14. Chen Ming exhaled deeply. Although objectively speaking, the entire process of the spacecraft passing through the Stargate just now only took 10 seconds in reality. But the physical sensation of his prosthesis just now lasted for half an hour. Higu next to him suddenly asked Chen Ming, "How do you feel?" Originally, Chen Ming was still wondering if his situation was special, which led to this kind of thing when passing through the Stargate. But looking at Higu's question now, it should be that everyone or all psychics will encounter this situation when passing through the Stargate. So Chen Ming asked directly, "What happened just now?" Higu was not surprised that Chen Ming reacted so quickly to the question implied in his question. He immediately explained, "This is what will happen when teleporting over long distances through the Stargate. The wormhole singularity in the Stargate has the power to distort time and space, and teleported us to the other side of the Empire in just 10 seconds. In this process, this distorted power will of course be noticed by people. It's just that ordinary people's consciousness is too weak and they can't notice it at all. And because psychics are too sensitive and their thinking ability is too strong, when they pass through the Stargate, this period of time that should have passed quickly for ordinary people will be dragged out for a long time." Chen Ming listened to Higu's explanation and recalled what happened just now. Just when he entered the Stargate, it may be true that nothing had happened yet. But after half a second, the vibration of the spacecraft gradually disappeared, and at this time his consciousness had actually left his body. It was just because the surrounding environment was too dark, and he focused all his attention on his consciousness, and didn't find any abnormalities at all. In fact, he should have noticed it as early as when the vibration of the spacecraft disappeared. Chen Ming covered his head and said, "So during this period of time, if you want to go through it easily, just relax. Don't resist the feeling of your mind being pulled out. It's just an illusion caused by the distortion of time and space. It's human instinct to make you enter the unconscious state as soon as possible so that you can quickly get through meaningless events. It doesn't matter. But I feel that once I relax, I will fall into the abyss. That's the instinct of psychics. Higu explained, the most important thing for psychics is consciousness itself. So if a psychic falls into an unconscious state, then this is the time when a psychic is most vulnerable. Of course, if you enter an unconscious state when passing through the Stargate, so will other people, so don't worry too much. You won't go through the Stargate on the same spaceship with your enemy, right? Of course, you can resist that feeling, just treat it as training your psychic power, and the effect is very good. It can make psychics feel mentally exhausted, but it actually has no substantial impact. In addition, its power source is very special, which is a good way to exercise the ability to control psychic power. If it weren't too expensive, it would have been promoted long ago. What Higu said was indeed right. Chen Ming could feel the limiting effect of the space-time force that Higu mentioned on his mental power during that period of time. And under such a limiting effect, psychics must use great willpower to persist in not letting their consciousness be pulled out of their bodies, which is really a training. Especially training mental power control in extreme situations and subtle mental power. Perhaps it was because he persisted for a long time and continued to use psychic power to counter every subtle force. Chen Ming could even feel that his control over psychic energy had improved significantly again, especially at the microscopic level. Chen Ming looked down at his palm. There was an iron atom in the center of his palm. Although it was invisible to the naked eye, Chen Ming's sight was no longer limited to the iron atom. He could vaguely see the protons and neutrons that made up the iron atom. As long as his psychic energy continued to grow and continue to be trained, he would be able to control a deeper existence sooner or later. Higu deliberately did not tell Chen Ming about this in advance. After all, once someone said it, they were prepared in advance and knew that nothing would happen. Then when they couldn't bear it, the psychic energy at the center of the space-time power would not necessarily try their best to resist it, and the effect would naturally be worse. But if the psychic in it didn't know that it was okay for the consciousness to leave the body, then they would naturally try their best to persist until they couldn't bear it anymore. Chen Ming was an exception, because his consciousness when he entered the Stargate was only a part. Therefore, the training effect on mental power is not ideal, but the control of spiritual power is more detailed. It allows him to see more microscopic levels. So how did you get here just now? Higu asked curiously, how long did you hold on? I held on for a while, about 15 minutes, and I relaxed when I couldn't stand it anymore. 15 minutes? Higu repeated what Chen Ming said with surprise. It made Chen Ming realize that the time he said was a bit long. However, Higu didn't feel surprised immediately after the accident. After all, this was Chen Ming. 15 minutes is good. Next time you are prepared, you won't have such a good training opportunity. At this point, Chen Ming suddenly realized that he came here by sitting in the Stargate. The Stargate was opened because the main fleet of the 14th Legion went there, so if he wanted to go back, when will the next Stargate be activated? In a week, the fleet of the next Legion will go there, and we can just follow along then. Oh! Just as Chen Ming finally left the Stargate. On the headquarters network of the 14th Legion, a private meeting had just been held. In a conference room on the virtual reality network, virtual projections of about 20 people were seated at the table in the conference room. Everyone's appearance was unclear in the dark, but all participants knew each other's identities. At the front of the conference table, there was a projected photo. It was a photo near the Stargate. In the center of the photo, there was a destroyer waiting at the edge of the Stargate. The photo was constantly enlarged. When it was enlarged to the highest precision, the photo locked Higu and Chen Ming through the porthole of the destroyer. Finally, the perspective focused on Chen Ming's face. Chen Ming has entered the Stargate and has arrived at the 14th star field. He is coming to the headquarters, in the virtual conference room located in the 14th core network. About 20 people sat around the round table in the center of the conference table. There was a number plate in front of each seat, marking each person's number. When Chen Ming's photo was fixed on the projection screen next to the conference table, the initiator or host of the meeting with the number 1 sign in front of him spoke first. The main purpose of this meeting is to discuss the purpose of Chen Ming's visit to the headquarters and prepare countermeasures. I invited all the participants in this meeting, and they can probably guess who they are. But as long as you are careful when you speak, your specific identity will not be discovered. So please speak freely. As soon as the host finished speaking, number 2, who was sitting next to him, immediately said, "Isn't Chen Ming's purpose very clear? It is definitely related to Bai Quan. Bai Chuan's momentum is too strong, and even the superiors took the initiative to let him stay in the headquarters for further study. Chen Ming came here at this time. It must be Bai Quan who is unwilling to give up his power. His head was pressed down, and he wanted to continue working. So the important thing is how to deal with it, and discuss the way to unite Chen Ming and Bai Quan." Number 2 did not give others a chance to speak, and continued to express his opinion. There are two connections between Chen Ming and Bai Quan. One is their long-term cooperation, and the other is marriage. Chen Ming and Bai Quan now have an absolute interest relationship, and it is impossible to find a gap in the cooperative relationship. So I think it's best to start from the aspect of marriage. If the marriage is destroyed, there will definitely be a thorn left between Chen Ming and Bai Quan, and we can take the opportunity to tear open the wound. The figure of number 2 clenched his fists hard, as if to crush the possibility of a strong union between Chen Ming and Bai Quan. But immediately, a figure with a rather broad figure and a number 9 in front of him said, "It's a bit too mean." "Yes, mean. Do you have any better ideas?" Number 9, who raised the question, immediately became alert and said, "I prefer to look for opportunities elsewhere." How to find it? It is not necessary to start with Chen Ming and Bai Quan. They have another target that cannot be moved, the branch in the Galostar region. Chen Ming left the branch and came to the headquarters, which means that the backbone of the branch has been reduced again. We can start from there. What he said sounded reasonable, but he could not avoid being questioned by others. Number 6 said, "The branch is now no different from Chen Ming Baichuan's base camp. Since Bai Quan carried out a large-scale purge under pressure last time, Baichuan's control over the branch is absolute. And there is Chen Ming's psychic effect. It has long been determined that his psychic power can not only control spacecraft, but also control all metal and mechanized structures. No one knows how close the relationship between Chen Ming and Bai Quan is. The entire branch may already be under Chen Ming's control." Number 9 certainly couldn't accept his proposal and let someone find loopholes. He immediately retorted, "Even if the entire branch is controlled by him, can his psychic power work so far?" Number 6 directly brought out the previous example and said, "It wasn't long after the Kayamo incident. Chen Ming can already be in the headquarters, and the spacecraft is in Kayamo. Why can't he control the branch from the headquarters?" Number 9 continued to retort refuted. "The distance between Kamo and Jialua is quite different from that between the headquarters and Jialua, and Chen Ming spaceships in Kamo are all afterglow spaceships, which must be equipped with afterglow cores. We cannot be 100% sure that Chen Ming can control everything. Unless you ask Chen Ming directly about this matter, no one can get the answer before Chen Ming actually operates it." Number 6 knew that he was not right, so he softened his tone and said, "At least we have to compromise. When Chen Ming used spaceships at long distances, he used afterglow spaceships with afterglow cores. Then we assume that as long as Chen Ming controls it, he has the ability to know the situation around the controlled spaceship, but if he wants to control it, he can only do it through the afterglow core. I think this is a reasonable guess, right? At least it matches Chen Ming's current performance." Number 9 did not pursue number 9 relentlessly. After all, what number 6 said did make some sense. So he followed number 6's idea and said, "If you think so, it's impossible for all places in the branch to have afterglow cores. Chen Ming and Bai Quan, 2 key figures, have left the branch, and the defense will definitely be empty. We can do something there." Number 10 next to number 9 suddenly spoke up, "I don't think it's necessary to go off the beaten track and attack this branch. The tasks from our headquarters have been sent out, and the spacecraft has passed the Stargate. The Bennu starfield will definitely fall into our hands. The scale of the Bennu starfield is not at the same level as the scale of Bai Quan's branch that couldn't even occupy a star zone. As long as we can fully occupy Bennu and turn Bennu into a new branch of ours, the branch of Gallo is not worth mentioning. At that time, The branch over there will become the branch of Bainu. Number 9 knocked on the table to interrupt number 10, who wanted to continue. The branch of Gallo Star region has a geographical advantage. Bainu Star region is not a prosperous star region, not developed enough, nor is it a marginal star region. It occupies a favorable position for external development. It cannot completely replace the position of Gallo Star region, which is bordered by Yuhui and the mechanical race. And more importantly, you want Baikwan to spit out the things in his mouth? Have you forgotten what he was like before because Baikwan has entered the political arena? A person's personality will affect the way he does things. When he is completely after he is thoroughly familiar with politics, he will bring in his previous brutal way of doing things. If anyone wants to take advantage of the meat in his mouth, Baikwan will definitely tear off a bigger piece of meat from that person. Even if we build Bainu into a complete and better branch, what's the matter? The branch in the Gallo Star field will still be a branch of the headquarters, and it will still be the headquarters of Baikwan. We must take action against the branch while Baichuan's strength is still weak. Don't forget that there are also our people in the fleet that just set off. Although the Bainu Star field has been built into our branch, it will not affect Baichuan's control over the Gallo branch, but we can use some external means to change this situation now. No one had any opinion on number 9's speech. But just when the more than 20 people attending the meeting were about to start discussing specific measures against the Gallo branch, number 17 suddenly poured cold water on everyone. There are people from the supervisory department in the fleet that went out. The conference room was silent for a moment, and number 1 asked, "Supervisory department?" Yes, although they didn't appear in the open, they definitely exist. With them watching, all our fleets that went out can do is to carry out their missions honestly. If you want to reach out to the 2-star regions, it depends on whether they agree or not. So either you can directly send people from the headquarters to the Baikwan branch, or don't think about dealing with Gallo through Bainu. The fleet we go to Bainu can only exert some influence secretly at most. Any overt means, including military and economic interference, are impossible to achieve. No, it's okay. Someone can come to help take the blame. Who will come? No one spoke. No one dared to be too presumptuous in front of the supervisory department. The supervisory department of the 14th Legion does not belong to any faction and only serves the Legion commander. And the Legion commander does not have his own faction and exists purely for the benefit of the Legion. Chen Ming's joining is beneficial to the entire Legion. Baikwan walked out of the battlefield and became a lieutenant general. He is also a powerful figure. Chen Ming joined because of Baikwan, so the connection between Chen Ming and Baikwan is also beneficial to the Legion, so he will definitely protect Chen Ming. The Legion commander will never allow anyone to do something that is absolutely detrimental to the interests of the Legion. Of course, protection is protection, and there can be competition within the Legion, but the competition cannot be excessive. Last time, someone went too far, so it led to the end of the supervisory department. As a result, a lieutenant general and his faction retired early. Therefore, everyone present was quite wary of the supervisory department, and no one wanted to be the next person to be retired. Does that mean that Bainuo's side will not work at all? Number 17 thought about it and didn't say it for sure. It's not completely impossible. As long as we wait until the mechanical race war begins, the supervision of the supervisory department on us will definitely decrease, and there will be a chance then. In the front, we can only rely on the actions of the headquarters. Take this opportunity to arrange people. After number 17 finished speaking, number 6 said as if he was very familiar with Baikwan. Baikwan has grown very fast after we targeted him several times. He is no longer the Baikwan before. People who are directly sent there will not work, especially those sent by the headquarters. Baikwan will not relax his vigilance at all. If we can't get the fleet from Bainuo Star region, if you can't get help, then I would rather withdraw my proposal. At this time, number 9 sang a different tune from number 6, but Baikwan is not in the branch, there is still a chance. Number 6 shook his head and said, there is a chance, but it must not be used as the main means. We still have to look back to see if there are any means to dissolve the relationship between Chen Ming and Baikwan. Number 2, who first made the proposal, heard this and immediately said, isn't it back to the beginning? Start with the marriage relationship and never let Chen Ming and Chen Xinghai get married. A strong alliance is definitely not a good thing for us. Seeing that no one had any objections to what he said, number 2 continued, then there are 3 directions to start with the marriage: Chen Ming, Qing Xinghai, and Bai Quan. Bai Quan is now learning command techniques for the mechanical race. He is protected and has no chance to contact them. It is impossible to start with him. Then, just when number 2 was talking about his thoughts, number 13 suddenly said, in fact, Bai Quan's wife should also be able to influence Cheng Xing. Before he finished speaking, the meeting room, which was still quietly listening to number 2's words, suddenly became noisy. Are you stupid? Get lost. Kick him. Number 13's figure disappeared in the meeting room in an instant. After all, the people who can participate in this meeting are not too young and basically have wives and children. They can fight as they please, but it is the consensus of everyone that their wives and children will not be harmed. If one person breaks the rules, everyone will not be happy. Of course, Cheng Xinghai's situation is different. Although Cheng Xinghai is Bai Quan's adopted daughter, she is a soldier, and a soldier who has been on the battlefield. This is the difference. Since you have embarked on the path of the army, you must be prepared to face targeting. After confirming that number 13 had been kicked out, number 2 continued to speak. If we can't do anything to Bai Quan, then we can only start with Cheng Xinghai and Chen Ming. Chen Ming's spiritual power is there. No one wants to contact it, right? So I prefer Cheng Xinghai. Does anyone know where Cheng Xinghai is? Number 1 immediately replied, it's the end of May now. Cheng Xinghai is a junior student. He must be in school. No need to guess. Okay. Number 2 nodded to number 1 and said, the way to prevent Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghai from getting married is also very simple. Just find a better one for Cheng Xinghai. Chen Ming is 26 this year. Cheng Xinghai is 19. The difference is I'm 7 years old now, so I should be able to find a lot of suitable people just based on age. Young people who are within 7 years of Chen Ming, or who are not more outstanding. Young people who have any recommendations? Number 8 raised his hand slightly and said, Cheng Xinghai is a student majoring in military command at the military university. In this major, there are indeed some outstanding students in her class. But let's put it this way, almost all the opposite sex who are of the same age as Cheng Xinghai have long been introduced to Bai Quan by their families. People of the same age, 2 or 3 years older, as long as they have some ability, absolutely no one has been missed. As a result, none of them succeeded. No one usually talks about the failure of marriage proposals, so you probably don't know, but I know. I can also say that it is impossible to find someone to replace Chen Ming from Cheng Xinghai. Looking at the entire empire, there may be someone, but there is really no one suitable among the people that the 14th Army can contact. Number 8's tone of often playing matchmaker made number 2 very unwilling. He insisted on his own idea and asked, if we don't look at ability, what about the identity? Number 8 immediately said, Cheng Xinghai is the adopted daughter of the 14th Army Lieutenant General, and she is also a psychic. It is impossible for her to marry down. The person she wants to marry must be at least above. If the person is a person of the same status, or the other party is also a psychic, the conditions can be relaxed appropriately. That is to say, if the person is not a psychic, then at least he must be the son of a general. But as far as I know, most of the generals in our legion have grandchildren, and the grandchildren are all people of the next generation, which has nothing to do with Cheng Xinghai. Only the youngest son of that general can barely be considered as this generation. It is indeed okay for the general not to participate in the factional struggle, but who can persuade the general? And the son of that general is only 15 years old. Is it appropriate? Number 2 still didn't want to give up. What about other legions? Seeing that what number 2 said was getting more and more outrageous, number 6, who had been resisting number 2's idea, couldn't stand it anymore and interrupted. Stop talking nonsense. I've heard what number 8 said. At most, we can start with Chen Ming. Speaking of which, has Chen Ming not been very active recently? This incident at the headquarters is the first influential thing he has done recently, right? That's not the case. Number 20 said, Chen Ming's recent inaction does not mean that Chen Ming has not done anything. He has been publishing various research and development results, especially the extraordinary laboratory he opened over there. The research results on the mechanical race can be published in a few days. His psychic power can be to control the mechanical race. The supplies given by the superiors are quite a lot. Many old-fashioned laboratories that study the mechanical race may not be as powerful as theirs. After all, whatever experiment they want to do, Chen Ming can just operate the mechanical race. It would be strange if the efficiency is not high. There are also some relics of that civilization given to Chen Ming for research. Those things are also exaggerated. And he also has some patents for antimatter technology. Don't think that he is not working if he doesn't make a big move. Number 1 asked Number 20, who was suspected to be a member of the Legion's Scientific Research Department, in surprise, is there such a thing? Not everyone cares about the patents of the technology they use. Don't think that he is still an ordinary person without vision after joining our Legion for a while. To introduce a suitable person to Chen Ming, we must not only consider Chen Ming's psychic power, but also Chen Ming's own ability. This time, Number 2 was not bothered by what Number 20 said about Chen Ming's situation, and said decisively, then let's not consider his ability first. People always look up. If they have good ones, they will definitely not want the bad ones, not to mention that the bad ones have not yet reached him. Number 8 suddenly couldn't help but interrupt and said, wait a minute, do you have any misunderstandings about good and bad? Who can make Chen Ming give up his relationship with Bai Quan and choose someone else? Who can give Chen Ming more benefits than Cheng Xinghai? You are thinking wrongly. Number 2 said confidently, it is not necessary to let Chen Ming come choose, but let Bai Quan choose. If Chen Ming is not a good sir, but a rotten man who is merciless, will Bai Quan give him his daughter? Instead, as long as Chen Ming did something irrational, Bai Quan couldn't get married with Chen Ming's informed reputation. In the end, there is no deep hatred with Chen Ming. However, some people fell silent. All the people present were from the 14th Corps, and all were military men. Some people could accept using some political means to achieve their goals, but using the method of selling out female members was a rather shameful way to achieve their goals, which was unacceptable to them. Originally, everyone would occasionally express their opinions in the conference room, but only half of the people were discussing the feasibility of the plan proposed by Number 2. The rest of the people remained silent. The atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became weird. The people who were talking also noticed this immediately, and the discussion about choosing the right person to use some improper means to deal with Chen Ming immediately stopped. But everyone knew that what Number 2 said was indeed a feasible method, and someone would definitely try it. There are always people with flexible moral bottom lines. The conference room was silent for a long time. Finally, Number 1 opened the situation. Maybe there is another person we can find an opportunity with. Who? Cheng Xinghai. He had conflicts with Chen Ming before. He had a conflict with Chen Ming in the Gallo Star region and was captured by Chen Ming. Later, he was redeemed by Bai Quan. Although their conflict seemed to have been resolved through Bai Quan, those who understand will understand that those who are arrogant will definitely not accept someone of the same age as themselves to suppress them. We can find a way to exert some influence on the people around him and let those people use Cheng Xinghai's defeat to Chen Ming to suppress him. Create some conflicts between him and Chen Ming. Find a way to bring up the old things again and magnify the conflicts between Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghai to the point of life and death hatred. Cheng Xinghai and Cheng Xinghai are siblings anyway. As long as the relationship between Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghai continues to deteriorate, it will definitely cause a rift between Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghai. This proposal made the participants' eyes light up, and the meeting continued. At the same time, the spaceship that Chen Ming took arrived at the headquarters colony. It was not a military colony located on the volcanic planet, but a comprehensive colony belonging to the 14th Corps. Although the military base was built on the volcanic planet. But since the 14th Corps controls a star field alone, it must have a supporting government team, so the government team naturally fell on this comprehensive colony. When the spaceship that Chen Ming took landed on the space station connected to the ground through the space elevator, Chen Ming felt that a psychic wave directly locked him. Of course, This psychic wave did not show any hostility, but simply locked him and warned Chen Ming not to do something wrong in the headquarters. Of course, Chen Ming would not commit suicide. Silently follow Hegu. Anyway, Hegu got by Quan's request to find him, so he would naturally help him arrange everything in the future. Then, Hegu did not take Chen Ming to see Bai Quan immediately, but took Chen Ming to a building. In a corner near the building where no one would notice, Hegu said to Chen Ming, "Disguise a little." Disguise? Chen Ming rubbed a medical mask with his hands, put on a pair of slightly dark glasses and said, "Okay." Hegu looked Chen Ming up and down, and confirmed that he was not a familiar person and would not notice the problem. He took Chen Ming into the building and entered a room in the corner of the first floor of the building. This room was not empty, but a huge lecture hall with about 300 or 400 people sitting. There were a lot of people in the lecture hall, but no one cared about Chen Ming brought in by Hegu. After all, not everyone knew Chen Ming's face, even if he was disguised. At the same time, most of the people who knew Chen Ming thought that Chen Ming would definitely go to meet Bai Quan first after arriving at the headquarters, and no one expected Hegu to dare to bring someone into the lecture hall. So at least for the time being, when Chen Ming entered the lecture hall, no one felt that anyone was looking at him. Chen Ming moved a little closer to Hegu and whispered, "What is this lecture hall for now?" Of course, the lecture hall is for holding meetings and giving reports. Hegu seemed to be focusing on other people. He subconsciously replied before he realized Chen Ming's thoughts and explained, "It's for the meeting in the Binyu Star region. Our headquarters sent such a large fleet there, and there will be new reinforcements later, so the rear must also be adjusted in time." Adjust what? You have to know that the Binyu Star region is a star region, and our legion is going to control the entire star region, and one star region can fully support a legion. This is an opportunity to expand the 14th Legion's military strength, but it is also a place where problems will arise. Chen Ming probably understood what Hegu meant. The Binyu Star region is too far away from the 14th Legion's headquarters, and an army supported by a star region can completely break away from the headquarters and become independent. So the 14th Legion must pay considerable attention to being vigilant against division, and it must not allow the part that is separated to become a new independent legion. Worried about the split? Hegu nodded slightly and said, "Yes, but it's more than that. You can see that the 14th Legion is now powerful. We are the most popular in the entire empire. If the higher-ups have the idea of splitting our legion, Bainu is the best opportunity. So we must be prepared to deal with this possibility. Even if the higher-ups really make it clear that our legion must be divided into two, we must do something to minimize the impact. This report meeting is to announce a management policy for the Bainu star field discussed by the legion's top leaders. It's probably to establish a rotation mechanism for the management of the headquarters and the Bainu branch. You should know the reason. Chen Ming certainly understands. The management situation after the Bainu star field is absolutely fully covered by the top-level 14th Legion. The top level is occupied by the 14th Legion, and a small number of Bainu natives are left. The middle and bottom levels are a mixture of the Legion and the Bainu natives. This means that if the management of the Bainu star field does not rotate, there is a high probability that Bainu will be controlled by the same group of people during the Legion's control of Bainu. There will definitely be big problems. So when Bainu is completely controlled, most of the forces of the 14th Legion will digest and infiltrate Bainu. This is something that must be done before ensuring that the two separated star regions will never become independent. Hegu did not confirm Chen Ming's thoughts with Chen Ming, because he knew that Chen Ming would definitely guess it. In addition to what I just said, the rest is to announce a few new internal management regulations applicable to the current situation. Management regulations? Chen Ming was about to ask what the management regulations were. Hegu had already signaled Chen Ming to sit down at the position next to the Psychic Research Institute where the sign of the department was placed. The position of the people in the Psychic Research Institute in the lecture hall is even at the front of the entire lecture hall. After all, this department is considered to be a civilian department ranked among the top few in importance in a legion. Other research departments that can compete with the Psychic Research Institute are only the Ship and Weapon Design Institute. Of course, although the research department is important, it has nothing to do with the movement of the legion. Therefore, When the army arranged the location of the Psychic Research Institute, it was arranged in a position that was relatively forward, but also relatively close to the side. It was equivalent to being in a corner of the lecture hall, which would not attract much attention from others. What management regulations? You will know later. Higu sat on the chair and closed his eyes to rest. It seemed that it would take some time for the conference to start. But Chen Ming still had several questions to ask. What he wanted to ask most was what Higu meant. Why did Higu bring him to this lecture hall to attend this conference? Under normal circumstances, even if he wanted to come, Higu would first take Chen Ming to Bai Quan's side, and then Bai Quan would bring him here and sit in the seat of Bai Quan's faction. And the Psychic Research Institute that Higu belonged to had nothing to do with any faction, so there was no need to bring him here. There must be some reason for Higu to do this. But Higu was sleeping now, and Chen Ming had nothing to say. He simply took a look around at this moment. It would be fine if he didn't look, but he did. Chen Ming saw the front entrance of the lecture hall, and Bai Quan's old boss just walked in and was about to take a seat. And just as Chen Ming looked at his old boss's eyes also passed over him. Chen Ming was sure that his old boss also saw him, because his eyes paused on him for a while before moving away, and then slid smoothly over Higu. But he pretended to look like he didn't see anything. Without any pause in his body movements, he sat in the first row of the lecture hall surrounded by other people. And it was the middle row of the 3 rows on the left, middle, and right of the lecture hall, which was closer to the middle. He sat with several generals. And some other lieutenant generals that Chen Ming saw were basically sitting on the side. Chen Ming looked at Bai Quan's old boss for a while and then retracted his eyes, and there was no special expression either. After waiting for about half an hour, more than 100 people came one after another, bringing the number of people in the entire lecture hall to about 500. When the time came to 9 a.m. on Earth time, the report meeting officially began. Higu also opened his eyes immediately. A general walked up to the stage from the first row and started the meeting. The meeting was just a report meeting. Just listen. Chen Ming simply pretended to be listening, picked up the pen and paper prepared on the table in front of him, and began to scribble. Of course, he did listen with his ears perked up. He even listened very seriously. This report meeting of the 14th Legion was about the Binyu Star region, and the Binyu Star region was very close to the Gallo Star region. So the Legion's actions on this star region must also have some impact on the Gallo Star region branch. He had to listen. The more he listened, the tighter Chen Ming frowned. Because the content of the meeting was indeed the same as what Higu had just briefly said. It was about the management rotation system of the Binyu Star region. It was said in more detail, so that the headquarters had to regularly station additional staff in the branch. At the same time, some of the branch's management personnel need to rotate with the headquarters to ensure that the branch always maintains close contact with the headquarters. At first, Chen Ming didn't think there was anything wrong, but as Chen Ming listened to it and connected it to several management regulations announced later, the situation seemed a little wrong. Because in addition to the personnel scheduling of the top management, the management regulations also require that all military ranks and personnel changes above a certain position in the branch need to be reviewed and approved by the headquarters, a new department established after receiving the order from the Empire to enter Binyu. This regulation is used to limit the branch's appointment authority. Specifically, school-level officers and battalion-level positions and above are restricted. At the same time, the administrative management log of the branch also needs to be fully backed up and archived and sent back to the headquarters regularly. This sounds reasonable. The administrative management log includes some things like reward and punishment systems, and it should indeed be known to the headquarters. The direction of military supplies of senior and above levels, or large quantities of military supplies in the branch, must be known to the headquarters. Chen Ming remembers that there is a list of these senior registered military supplies. He has also seen it. It can only be said that all the materials used by cruiser level and above ships can be regarded as high-level materials. The headquarters only needs to know the direction of the materials and does not need to write clearly where each piece of material is used. As long as they can have a general inference and understanding of the situation of the branch, it will be fine. It can be seen that this report meeting is intended to make the branch subject to the headquarters in all aspects. And there is no problem with these management regulations being applied to the Binyu starfield. Chen Ming has no objection. However, all the content of the entire conference, all the management regulations mentioned refer to the branch, not the Binyu branch. This is the biggest problem. Although this conference was held because of Binyu, all regulations will be applied to the branch used for Binyu at the first time. However, the Gallo branch is also a branch of the 14th Legion, and everything said in the entire conference will also apply to the Gallo branch. Let's take the simplest example. If the headquarters had such regulations before, then the branch will have management personnel from the headquarters, becoming the management of Bai Quan. Everything Bai Quan does will be influenced by the headquarters management. The previous internal purge is likely to end in vain under the influence of this person. Although there are loopholes in this regulation, which can allow the headquarters to send people from the same faction. But other conflicting factions in the headquarters will definitely not miss this opportunity to make trouble. If other factions are mixed into the management, there will definitely be big problems. The 14th Legion has just moved into Binyu, and multiple factions are competing at the same time, so it doesn't matter if there are more people. But if other people are stuffed into this small place of the Gallo branch, the situation will be completely different. It's scary to think about it. And there is another situation that may happen, that is Chen Ming's position. According to the current requirements, Bai Quan does not have the authority to give Chen Ming, a psychic, the same power as a captain-level officer. It must be approved by the headquarters. And Chen Ming's psychic power is there. Before the 14th Corps showed full trust some time ago, the headquarters had excuses and reasons for Bai Quan to not give Chen Ming enough authority. Of course, Chen Ming was promoted to the same level of officer after joining the Corps directly from an external tactical instructor, and even promoted to the same level by relying on research results. This was reviewed by the headquarters, and there is no problem. And the current rules will not affect the previous things. Chen Ming is what position he should be. Otherwise, Chen Ming would not get the spiritual awakening nerve and the thousands of contribution points sent by He Gu. Just thinking about it, Chen Ming thought of what Bai Quan had done in the Jialua branch that did not comply with the current management regulations. And if these management regulations are really implemented, Chen Ming looked up at Bai Chuan's old boss. Although the people in the front row did not move much, they would not show their thoughts even if they had them. But the faces of those who sat a little further back had very ugly expressions. On the contrary, some people who sat in other seats were staring at their old boss with a look of amusement, and it was obvious that they also knew what the regulations were about this time. He Gu also turned his head slightly to look at Chen Ming at this time. He saw Chen Ming's serious expression, so he knew that Chen Ming had understood the importance of this conference. In fact, when He Gu knew that this conference was going to be held, he had roughly guessed what would happen. The 14th Corps did not have a branch before, and Bai Chuan's side was a new attempt of the Corps. And this attempt now seems to have been obviously successful. Then even if there was no Banyo incident in the future, when Bai Quan expanded the Jialua branch, the headquarters would also have corresponding rules. So it was only a matter of time before the content of this conference appeared. This conference was not only aimed at Banyo, but also at Bai Chuan's faction. He Gu felt that this kind of thing needed to be made known to Chen Ming. But Bai Quan couldn't come, and the time just now was not enough for Bai Quan to arrange Chen Ming into the lecture hall. Only if he applied for an extra position in advance could Chen Ming get the news in the first place, and the news was not processed by anyone. First-hand information can make people consider and analyze without interference from anyone. Although Chen Ming and Bai Quan would know about this sooner or later given their relationship, he brought Chen Ming here in advance, and his attitude was already shown. He wanted to show his goodwill to Chen Ming. He was willing to invest in Chen Ming. He hoped that Chen Ming would be able to temporarily join the Psychic Research Institute under his goodwill, because he really needed Chen Ming's psychic power to do things, especially the things of the mechanical race. As the legacy of another civilization, the mechanical race itself has a large number of psychic-related equipment and devices, and even mechanized psychic creatures have appeared recently. They are inseparable from psychic power, so their Psychic Research Institute certainly has a research room dedicated to studying the psychic properties of the mechanical race and the psychic weapons of the mechanical race. The war of the mechanical race is about to begin. The benefits of Chen Ming, a psychic who can control the mechanical race, to the war are obvious. Of course, this does not mean that Chen Ming is no good at his own research institute, but that they can promote the research results faster. And their psychic research institute is supported by the entire Legion. The resources they have are not on the same level as Chen Ming's. Chen Ming's research institute needs to apply for things, and it depends on Bai Quan's means. Although there is indeed some support from the Legion, it is definitely not as good as the Psychic Research Institute, which is a storage place for a large amount of psychic materials. Even if Chen Ming does not want to join the Psychic Research Institute, it is just a temporary cooperation, which will be of great benefit to both parties. So Higu's idea is to temporarily move Chen Ming, or even Chen Ming's entire Extraordinary Research Institute, to the Psychic Research Institute at least during the war between the Empire and the mechanical race. Of course, his own behavior does have some problems. After all, the Psychic Research Institute itself is absolutely neutral and does not participate in any factional struggles, whether it is the rules of the Psychic Research Institute or the rules of the Legion. But the Corps and the Institute cannot completely prohibit all researchers from interacting with people from any faction. Even the researchers within the Institute cannot be without affiliation in many cases, and they will always be close to people from certain factions. For example, Higu is actually close to Lu Wei. When Lu Wei asked Higu to help determine Chen Ming's psychic status, he came immediately. But this did not affect his watching the show later, nor did it affect his friendship with Chen Ming, who had a conflict with Lu Wei. At the same time, it did not affect his continued work in the Institute after the fall of Lu Wei's faction. The 14th Corps is a huge corps. A corps that controls a star field. The relationship within the entire corps is complicated. After the corps was rebuilt, more than 10 years have passed, a full generation. It is impossible to completely prohibit the interaction between people in the completely neutral department of the Psychic Research Institute and people from other factions. Of course, the participation of the lower-level people belongs to the participation of the lower-level people, and the rules still absolutely prohibit the use of the resources of the Institute. And Higu's current behavior is just to kindly help a lost soldier to the lecture hall to listen to a report meeting. If you really investigate, he has excuses and reasons. Anyway, his purpose does not involve any faction. He just wants Chen Ming to work in the Psychic Research Institute. No matter how much punishment there is, it will only be a salary deduction. But for psychics, salary deductions are nothing. That's why Higu made such a choice. Bring Chen Ming here. The report meeting is still going on. The admiral above continued to speak, and his speech became more and more in-depth and complicated. But Chen Ming had studied with Bai Quan for a long time, and he could understand some professional terms. So after listening to the following words, Chen Ming found that there was still a chance for things to turn around. Because the Corps meant to use the Banyo star field as a pilot for this management regulation, and then gradually expand its application. Just like what Higu said at the beginning. These management regulations are not aimed at anyone, but a preventive measure. But the Corps meant that if a few words can be changed to solve the possible problems in Bai Quan, why not do it? Although it is reasonable to let small places test the rationality of the regulations first, and Banyo should not be allowed to start first. But special situations should be dealt with in special ways. After all, this conference was held because of Banyo, so it must start with Banyo. And there are indeed special circumstances now, because Jialua is the front line. How can the front line be allowed to pilot for the rear? So in general, the restrictions of these legions will gradually become apparent after the fleets that go out of the legion control Bainu. It will not have much impact on Bai Quan for the time being. Bai Quan is now the vanguard of the war between the 14th Legion and the Mechanical Clan, and it is impossible for Bai Quan to be really disappointed. The reconnaissance before the war and the confrontation in the early stage of the war all rely on the branch of Jialua as a fulcrum. Therefore, at least on the surface, the consensus of all people in the Legion is to support Bai Quan, and all the internal opposition voices have been suppressed. However, Chen Ming also believes that there will always be people who are hostile to Bai Quan and him and do something. And if the pilot effect of this management regulation is good, it will be used in Jialua sooner or later. He has to ask Bai Quan. The report meeting will end soon. Chen Ming got up and followed Higu. Higu took Chen Ming away as usual without saying anything. Anyway, he brought the person here, and what he had to do was over. Chen Ming and Bai Quan are both smart people, and they will soon understand his intention to do so, and there is no need to say more. Soon, Higu took Chen Ming to a parking lot near the building where the conference was held. Of course, it is called a parking lot, but it can actually park shuttles. Higu took Chen Ming to a shuttle, opened the hatch and motioned Chen Ming to get on. The shuttle was bright white in color, with a streamlined appearance, and there were decorative tail wings extending on both sides. The style was very good. Is this your shuttle? No, it's from the Institute. Higu patted the outer shell of the shuttle and said, "It's really beautiful." Chen Ming looked at the shuttle twice before walking in. Higu followed closely and got into the cab, drove the shuttle, and sent Chen Ming all the way out of the city, to a military base some distance away from the city. Landed inside the military base. As the hatch of the shuttle opened, Chen Ming saw Bai Quan waiting at the door. Higu, who was in the cockpit, turned to Chen Ming and said, "We're here, get off the boat. I'll have to prepare a new instrument for you to detect psychic properties. We'll contact you later. By the way, I've also sent you the address of the Psychic Research Institute. Come visit us when you have time." Chen Ming waved to Higu. He got off the shuttle. The shuttle turned around and disappeared into the military base. And Chen Ming walked up to Bai Quan and said, "Long time no see. It's been a while." Bai Quan looked at Chen Ming for a while and said, "Let's go." Chen Ming followed him and habitually asked, "Where are we going?" "The teaching park here. I'm here to learn the key points of commanding the mechanical race." "There is such a place in the military base, and you want to learn it?" "Of course there is such a place. Not everything is taught in the school. People who come out of the school come here to learn further before going to the battlefield. As for me, I am used to fighting Yue before. I have to learn some techniques to fight the mechanical race here and change my previous habit of fighting Yue." Bai Quan quickly took Chen Ming to the teaching park. Chen Ming was quite sharp and saw that there were indeed many young faces in the classroom in the distance, and there were also some older people who were listening to the lectures of officers younger than them. However, the two did not stay here for long, but went all the way to the dormitory building and entered Bai Quan's dormitory. After the dormitory door was closed, Bai Quan said, "Okay, now we can talk about what was said in the meeting. I guess it should be related to the branch." "Really?" Chen Ming sat on the sofa in the dormitory. After taking a bottle of pure water from Bai Quan and taking a sip, he asked, "By the way, did you ask Higu to take me to the report meeting?" Bai Quan sat down next to Chen Ming and replied, "Of course not. I just asked him to bring you to me." "What does he mean?" Bai Quan said without thinking, "Of course he wants you to help with the Psychic Research Institute. What else could it be?" He then explained to Chen Ming the situation of the Psychic Research Institute and his speculation on Higu's ideas. Chen Ming completely understood what Higu meant. Chen Ming had nothing to say. Anyway, he would meet Higu later, and he could talk to him in detail next time he met him. Now, he still had to tell Bai Quan about the content of the just concluded conference. After Chen Ming became a psychic, his enhanced mental power also gradually enhanced his memory. Now, he can repeat everything the Admiral said at the conference without any of his own understanding. There is no need to read the script or consider the participants. Chen Ming spoke in one breath in front of Bai Quan. He would only pause when Bai Quan signaled. In less than half an hour, he had spoken out the contents of the meeting that had just ended in almost an hour and a half. After listening, Bai Quan lowered his head slightly and thought for a while and said, "I roughly understand. The content of the meeting is similar to what I thought, just targeting Bain Yo and us at the same time, which is also the reason why I asked Higu to find you." Bai Quan expected that the Legion would take action against the branch, so he found an opportunity to call Chen Ming over so that he could talk to Chen Ming face to face about some more complicated topics. "So, what do you want me to do?" "Well, although the Legion is temporarily protecting the Garo branch, someone will take action. It will not be good for us if the branch suffers. But even if you don't say it, I will find a way to protect the branch." Bai Quan shook his head and said, "Your protection is military protection, but such protection alone is not enough. I need you to help me manage the situation of the branch." "Isn't Jing Xian here?" Not enough. He can't handle so many things. I have to rely on his assistants to manage the entire branch, not to mention him. Then what do you want me to do? I'll teach you some administrative regulations these days. You don't need to have a deep understanding, as long as you know some management strategies. Is this enough? Bai Quan just said that he and Jingxian could barely handle the situation of the branch. Even if Chen Ming and Jingxian learned administrative knowledge, it might not be useful. Bai Quan denied again. Of course not. My idea is that when you go back, don't hold back and use your psychic power to fully control the entire branch. Chen Ming opened his eyes wide in surprise and looked at Bai Quan and asked, "Are you sure?" "Sure." Bai Quan confirmed, "You must know more about your psychic power than I do. Even from my perspective, as long as you have a little knowledge of administrative management and have someone who can fully cooperate with you, such as Jingxian, you can manage the entire branch well." For Bai Quan, it is definitely better for the branch to be fully controlled by Chen Ming than to be infiltrated by others. The iron plate he has worked so hard to build must not be taken advantage of by others during his absence. And there is the most critical point. Chen Ming's psychic power is there, which is a deterrent to everyone. Okay. This kind of thing is not a loss for Chen Ming, as his relationship with Bai Quan is already there. He is in the 14th Legion, and he is in the same faction as Bai Quan, and there are various interests involved. If Bai Quan suffers losses, he will definitely suffer losses, and it is impossible for him to watch Bai Quan suffer losses. Bai Quan got a satisfactory answer and explained again, "It's not just the branch, you must also pay attention, because someone may come to trouble you. It may not be a direct conflict, there is a great possibility of a sinister plot in the dark. You may have to hold on until I finish learning new command techniques here, and wait until the troops from the headquarters are transferred to the Gallo branch, then I can go back with you." Chen Ming certainly has no objection to this. The more Bai Quan learns about the command techniques of the mechanical race now, the greater the possibility of surviving on the battlefield. However, Chen Ming did not understand one thing. The Legion has a fleet in Banyo that just went there to control Banyo. Higu told me that there will be another fleet going to Banyo in a week. And there is a fleet on the nearest front line fighting with Yu Hui's main force. The Legion can actually spare a fleet to fight the mechanical race? Bai Quan said as a matter of course, "What do you think? If it weren't for the fact that our army's military strength has exceeded many people's estimates, why did everyone at the conference hint that our army would be divided? This is the military strength of our 14th Army. Exaggerated." Just after Chen Ming's sigh, neither of them continued to speak. But it was less than 2 seconds. That. Chen Ming and Bai Quan suddenly spoke at the same time and interrupted each other. Bai Quan immediately said, "Then you go first." "Okay." Chen Ming sorted out his words a little and said, "I want to sell some of the energy crystal technology of the energy crystal crab." Chen Ming had thought about it before, and what Higu said was right. He was working on energy crystals by himself, and even if Yu Hui and the Zerg helped at the same time, he really couldn't meet the needs of all places. Not to mention supplying energy crystals to the entire empire, he might not be able to provide them in one star zone alone. Although at present, because the number of energy crystal crabs themselves needs to expand, the number of energy crystals Chen Ming supplies to the 14th Army has not reached the upper limit. It is impossible that Chen Ming robbed tens of thousands of them from Yu Hui, and they were all over the planet in a few months. But even so, relying solely on the queen of the current planet and Yu Hui, who is still in the process of development, the upper limit of the energy crystals that can be provided in a short period of time is just that. But if the cultivation and development process of energy crystal crabs is sold to the 14th Legion, the situation will be different. The production of energy crystals can definitely be greatly increased. And Chen Ming originally relied on the antimatter patent fees, the hyperspace channel jump engine patent fees, and the money earned from selling some energy crystals to maintain a balance between income and expenditure with the fleets outside. The money that can be earned will definitely be more. That's great. How do you plan to sell it? First of all, the energy crystal worms must not be given away. Giving away the worms will cause big problems. Chen Ming can only give the 14th Legion energy crystal crabs. As for the energy crystal crab, Although Chen Ming didn't pay much attention to the energy crystal crab after he let the queen of insects eat a few energy crystal crabs and cultivated the energy crystal worms made from the energy crystal crab genes. But fortunately, not all of the energy crystal crabs were eaten. They are still being cultivated. Although the energy crystal worms specially made by the queen of insects for converting energy crystals have a much better output and quality than the energy crystal crabs. But the energy crystal crabs are natural creatures after all. After special breeding, they may mutate into some interesting things. Chow Fan and the queen of insects have left a lot. Chen Ming can give these energy crystal crabs away. In addition, Chen Ming also plans to let the queen of insects use her ability to control genes to transform some energy crystal worms into the appearance of energy crystal crabs. Relying on his psychic power and the queen of insects' ability, it is very simple to modify genes so that people can't see it. This can also explain and disguise why the goods Chen Ming sold to the 14th Legion during this period are of different quality from the energy crystal crabs Chen Ming gave. I can directly give the seeds I have cultivated here to the Legion, but I don't know if the Legion can cultivate them in large quantities. Absolutely. Bai Quan said, the limitation on the development of energy crystal crabs by the Legion is the number. You gave me 2 adult energy crystal crabs and 2 eggs before, a total of 4 energy crystal crabs that can't do anything. It's okay to raise them as ornamental pets, but it's a fantasy to cultivate them with 4. But if you are willing to help, we are sure to shorten the breeding time significantly by stimulating various growth hormones, so you don't have to worry about this. How many people will it take? Quantity? Bai Quan thought of a rough number. At least 100,000. With this number we can start, and the more we can provide later, the better. No problem. I will send the Colossus to the branch when the time comes. The headquarters is a bit far away. Then Jingxian is responsible for this. You can talk to him when the time comes. I will help you to open up the relationship and you won't lose your share. Chen Ming nodded and reached a verbal agreement with Bai Quan. Okay, then I'm done. What did you want to say just now? Bai Quan's face suddenly blushed. He planned to shamelessly explain Cheng Xinghai's affairs. This matter can't be delayed any further. If it is delayed this time, it may take a few months for him and Chen Ming to talk about this kind of thing when they meet. By that time, the war with the mechanical race may have started, and he definitely won't have time to talk to Chen Ming about these romantic matters. So he must take advantage of now to make things clear. Bai Quan coughed dryly and said, how have you been doing in learning conducting recently? Do you have any questions? Chen Ming immediately understood what Bai Quan meant. He actually felt that the time was almost up and he couldn't delay any longer. Bai Quan has been talking about this for a long time and has given plenty of hints in all aspects. He must at least give Bai Quan, no, give Cheng Xinghai an answer. Chen Ming thought so, and subconsciously recalled the time he had spent with Cheng Xinghai recently. In his impression, there was a sense of comfort when getting along with Cheng Xinghai. Cheng Xinghai's personality was not like that of an ordinary 19-year-old girl. How could a girl in the army be like an ordinary girl? But she was not too strong and overbearing. Her personality was very delicate, or in other words, she would show different performances according to different situations. Chen Ming had this feeling when he first came into contact with Cheng Xinghai in the simulation. At that time, he was still thinking whether everything Cheng Xinghai showed when he was with him was deliberately shown and was false. But later Cheng Xinghai changed his mind, and she showed her truest side. That was when they talked about games. Cheng Xinghai would talk to Chen Ming about many things in the game in his spare time. If it was 1 or 2 days, Chen Ming might still be suspicious. But if Cheng Xinghai talked about it every day, even when Chen Ming was not too interested in or knowledgeable about the game for various reasons, she would still keep talking to Chen Ming and keep trying to sell him the game she often played. And even if Chen Ming really took the time to play it and didn't know anything about the game for the first time, and Cheng Xinghai was so angry that she blushed, she would still try her best to explain it to Chen Ming. This feeling is definitely not something that can be faked. The excitement of being absolutely interested in the game and the performance of investing most of your free time in it can't be faked. That kind of close feeling, the real feeling, is something Chen Ming has never experienced and will never forget. Of course, later she and Chen Ming got more and more familiar with each other, and she didn't mind directly saying a few words to Chen Ming when he performed the pig nose operation. But this did not affect Chen Ming's deep love for this feeling. In addition, when Chang Xinghai taught him, he didn't teach Chen Ming all the knowledge like Bai Quan, but the lesson plan was obviously made after careful consideration. Although Chang Xinghai recently found that Chen Ming's learning efficiency was a bit abnormal, he also felt closer to Bai Quan. But it was difficult for Chen Ming to give up this feeling. Although he was indifferent to some things and didn't care whether he did it or not. But if you get used to some things but lose them, it will really make people feel empty. Chang Xinghai, a girl he knows a little bit, is a very good choice. Chen Ming has made a decision in his heart. But there is a problem. What does Chang Xinghai think? Bai Quan seemed to see a little hope and said, "She agreed a long time ago and asked me about your attitude about a month ago. I was embarrassed to ask you directly, so I found an excuse to let her teach you something and let her confirm it herself." Didn't she ask? Chen Ming recalled the past again. Maybe there was a hint, but I wasn't sure of my thoughts before. But now, I can. Bai Quan paused when he looked at Chen Ming, stood up immediately, and patted Chen Ming's shoulder very intimately. Okay. His face was full of smiles. Then let's pick a suitable day for you and Xinghai to get married. Ahem. Chen Ming coughed and interrupted Bai Quan and said, "Wait, isn't this a bit too fast? Xinghai is only 19 years old, right? But you are 26. It's not too late for me to be 26. She is already 1 year older than the legal age for marriage at 19. Bai Quan sat next to Chen Ming again and said to Chen Ming, "You and Xinghai are in very special situations. It is impossible for you to slowly cultivate feelings before talking about marriage. It's a bit early to get married, but we can have an engagement party first, right?" Bai Quan was telling the truth. Chen Ming is now a level 5 psychic. It's impossible for him to find someone to talk slowly. Chang Xinghai's situation was even more difficult than his. After all, Chen Ming had the ability to decide his future, while Chang Xinghai, the adopted daughter of a lieutenant general, was also a psychic, but her ability was obviously far from Chen Ming's level. She really didn't have many choices. Chen Ming's previous hesitation actually had a hint of not wanting to take advantage of someone's misfortune. But in getting along with Chang Xinghai, Chen Ming confirmed that Chang Xinghai did not particularly dislike him. And now he has also confirmed Chang Xinghai's attitude through Bai Quan, so Chen Ming has no suitable reason to resist. He doesn't need a suitable reason, he can just accept such a result. Engagement banquet, this is fine. Okay. Bai Quan stood up again excitedly. It will definitely not be done within a week, so you may not be able to keep up with the opening of the Star Gate by then. I have to tell you this first. It's okay. I can drive a cruiser all the way back. It will only take a few days at most. Did you drive a cruiser here? No, but I can drive a cruiser. Okay. Bai Quan is no longer surprised by the effects of Chen Ming's psychic power. Where do you plan to live first? Live in my dormitory, or live somewhere else? That's fine. Chen Ming just saw that there are 2 empty rooms in Bai Quan's dormitory. I don't have high requirements for the conditions of the place where I live. Bai Quan's dormitory has 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and 2 bathrooms, and it is also a dormitory at the headquarters military base. The conditions are very good. Okay, then I'll contact Xinghai and tell him about this? Wait. Chen Ming quickly stopped him and said, "Let me go see her." Bai Quan was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He was a little too excited. It is indeed the most appropriate to let Chen Ming meet Chang Xinghai in person. She is at school and should be in the library at this time. I heard my wife complain to her 2 days ago that the task I gave her to teach you made her go to the library every day, and she had no time to play games. Does this make her feel uncomfortable? If she really hates it and doesn't want to do it, will she waste her time playing games to go to the library? Just teach you according to the lesson plan I gave you before, but there is no need to do it yourself? I know. Chen Ming nodded to Bai Quan, got up, and left the dormitory. And just after Chen Ming left, Bai Quan immediately took out the terminal. In the address book, he found the communication code marked with the word wife and called it. Do you have good news to hear? At this time, Chen Ming, who was going out, was already standing outside the dormitory building. The metal liquid was entrenched in his palm, gradually building the shuttle structure. And the style of this shuttle was the same as the one He-gu drove before. Although Chen Ming doesn't care about many things, he only cares about food. After all, he was afraid of being hungry before. But other people don't care about what he eats, but what he wears, uses, and drives. He still has to be a little careful when meeting people. He promised Bai Quan and is willing to take some responsibility. So when doing things, we should consider the attitude he should have after he promised. Chen Ming had checked it before. The shuttle of the Psychic Research Institute is a type of shuttle that is sold publicly by the Tachyon Technology Company and is specially supplied by the military. The value of one such shuttle is about the same as 2 ordinary guards. It can only be said that the shuttle of the Psychic Research Institute is so luxurious. At least such a shuttle will not lose its status when it goes out. As for the clothes on his body, Chen Ming looked down at himself, wearing a fairly neat white coat. It's okay to wear it in the institute, but it's not suitable to wear this kind of clothes in other places. It's better to go to the city to buy a set first. Wait, Chen Ming suddenly realized that he seemed to have neither the shuttle license nor the shuttle driver's license. It's not a big problem, just wait until he is caught. At this time, Bai Quan suddenly poked his head out of the dormitory window. I almost forgot to give you something. Chen Ming immediately looked up and asked, what is it? However, Bai Quan suddenly fell silent, his eyes locked on the shuttle that appeared inexplicably next to him. He immediately took back the shuttle key that he was about to throw to Chen Ming, and swallowed the words he was about to tell Chen Ming where his shuttle was. It's okay, you changed the license plate to mine. Then take this. Bai Quan turned his head, took out his driver's license, and threw it to Chen Ming. After Chen Ming took the things, he boarded the shuttle and left the military base. Although the colony of this planet is the headquarters of the 14th Corps, there are still many family members or staff living there. Therefore, the supporting infrastructure must be there. So Chen Ming changed into a set of clothes worth about 500,000 yuan in a shopping mall in the city and also took extra care of himself. Then he went to the military university directly under the city. With the license plate of Bai Quan, he landed safely in the parking lot of the school. The landing of the shuttle driven by Chen Ming attracted the attention of many students. Those who can study in the university of the headquarters are basically qualified to know the Psychic Research Institute, and of course they also know the value of the standard spacecraft of the Psychic Research Institute. Although this shuttle is not marked with the logo of the institute, it is enough to attract people's attention. Of course, Chen Ming ran very fast, and not many people noticed his whereabouts. Following the map, he quickly found the library. The first thing Chen Ming saw when he entered the library was Cheng Xinghai, who was sitting by the window. His eyes, slightly obscured by his short hair, were full of concentration. She was flipping through many textbooks at this time, just as she had complained before. If she wanted to teach Chen Ming, she would have to pick up a lot of previous knowledge again and thoroughly integrate it. She kept flipping through the books and taking notes, not noticing that Chen Ming was looking at her. Chen Ming walked over slowly and sat down in front of Cheng Xinghai. Cheng Xinghai, who had been immersed in the book, only noticed that there was a person sitting in front of her at this time. She raised her head and was about to get up and change her seat to avoid being disturbed. She saw Chen Ming's face. They looked at each other in silence. The two looked at each other for a long time. Chen Ming finally spoke. Well, Bai Quan told me basically everything. Cheng Xinghai pursed his lips, silently packed up the books and notes in front of him, and whispered, let's talk inside. The school was busy at this time, and Cheng Xinghai's seat was close to the window, which was indeed easy to be seen. So Chen Ming had no objection and followed Cheng Xinghai into the depths of the library. After walking to the corner of the library, Cheng Xinghai stopped, turned to look at Chen Ming. Cheng Xinghai was very smart, and her psychic ability made her smarter than her peers. But she was only 19 years old after all, and she was in school now, not on the battlefield. Such an environment allowed her to reveal her true inner side. She clasped her hands behind her back, her slender fingers moving restlessly, and she opened her lips slightly to Chen Ming cautiously and nervously. Then, what's your attitude? Chen Ming answered without a moment's hesitation, I'm here. Chen Ming was not referring to the headquarters, but Cheng Xinghai's school, in front of her. If you agree, then be decisive. Cheng Xinghai found that her face was slightly hot, and Chen Ming's attitude was already in front of her. But Chen Ming suddenly tilted his head slightly to the side. Cheng Xinghai immediately realized that Chen Ming's attention was not on her, and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Chen Ming shook his head. Although Cheng Xinghai took him to the corner of the library, there were still people in the corner of the library. In the direction where Chen Ming just looked, there was a person who was paying attention to the two of them, with shock in his eyes. He should know Cheng Xinghai, and he didn't expect Cheng Xinghai to show this expression in front of him. Chen Ming didn't pay much attention to the man and looked at Cheng Xinghai again. "Do you want to go out for a meal? It's noon now." "Okay." At the same time when Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghai left the school. In the corner of the school, in a building with the words "Computer Room Building" written on the outside. Cheng Xinghai had just climbed out of the simulation device subsystem equipped by the school. With a somewhat unpleasant look on his face, he pushed open the door of the small room where the simulation equipment was placed. Just then, someone from the opposite door pushed out. It was someone about the same age as Cheng Xinghai. He said to Cheng Xinghai, "It's 6 to 5, come again next time." Although Cheng Xinghai's face was a little ugly, he still forced a smile, nodded politely, and then turned around to leave. It was close to noon local time, and he had to take a rest. However, as soon as he turned his head, a tall figure appeared in front of him. He was stopped by someone. "Don't be in a hurry to leave, Cheng Xinghai. Do you have time to play again?" Cheng Xinghai frowned, raised his head slightly, and looked at the big guy in front of him who was nearly 2 meters tall. This man's name was Liao Hongsheng, and Cheng Xinghai was very impressed by him. Because when he was a freshman, he and Liao Hongsheng participated in a competition together. The final was a match between the two of them, and he won. Liao Hongsheng had been fighting with him at that time, and often asked him to play simulated battles. Although Liao Hongsheng was indeed capable, Cheng Xinghai was only 60% to 40% with him at most. Playing with such a person was indeed helpful for improving himself, and Cheng Xinghai didn't mind playing simulated battles with other people. Just like the one who just left, he also took the initiative to play simulated battles with others. But Cheng Xinghai didn't want to play with Liao Hongsheng. His situation was different from others, because he really talked a lot of trash and liked to taunt. Every time they met, he could hear a lot of completely unbearable words, and his attitude was also quite bad. In the beginning, Cheng Xinghai thought that Liao Hongsheng just couldn't stand him winning the competition and wanted to get back at him. So he agreed to Liao Hongsheng's invitation several times in a row. Anyway, if he played normally, he would always lose. This is indeed the case. It is impossible for Cheng Xinghai to not make mistakes. He lost to Liao Hongsheng's captain several times. At that time, Cheng Xinghai thought that Liao Hongsheng's attitude would become better. However, it did not happen. Liao Hongsheng's attitude even became worse and worse. Instead, he began to use Cheng Xinghai's defeat in front of others to say that Cheng Xinghai's previous victory in the competition was a piece of shit luck. After Cheng Xinghai heard this news, he went to check what was going on. Then he was ridiculed for a long time by Cheng Xinghai, who had long known that Liao Hongsheng was backed by a faction that had conflicts with the Baiquan faction. Since then, Cheng Xinghai was too lazy to pay attention to Liao Hongsheng. He didn't want to socialize with him, but trouble would always come to him. So Cheng Xinghai's choice at this time was to take out a pair of headphones from his clothes pocket and put them in his ears. He turned up the volume of the song playing on the terminal to the maximum, so that even Liao Hongsheng, who was several meters away, could hear it and turned sideways and walked around directly. But Liao Hongsheng completely ignored this. When Cheng Xinghai walked by him, he shouted loudly, "I heard that you went to the Edge Star Field some time ago and were captured?" Although Cheng Xinghai was playing music in his headphones, he did not completely block out all other sounds. Of course, he could hear Liao Hongsheng's revelations. But his first reaction was not to get angry. But why did Liao Hongsheng know about this? Why did he say this in public at this time? Cheng Xinghai is not a fool. Although he had made a foolish mistake before, which led to his arrest by Chen Ming. But the news at that time should not have been known by other students. After all, his capture involved other star fields, and also involved Yu Hui and Chen Ming. It was impossible for ordinary students to know about this and spread it at will. Of course, it was barely understandable that Liao Hongxing knew this. After all, Liao Hongxing had been targeting him a long time ago, and it was normal to learn about his dark history from his elders. But when Liao Hongxing brought this up at this moment, something was wrong. The floor he was on at this moment was a floor dedicated to the sub-equipment of the simulation device. And most people generally do not frequently enter deep consciousness when using the simulation device. In other words, people in the surrounding rooms who were doing ordinary simulations could hear the noise outside. So, although only the people who had just fought with Cheng Xinghe stopped in the corridor next to him to watch the show, there should be quite a few people paying attention to this place. What was Liao Hongxing trying to do? Cheng Xinghe was not sure, but with Bai Quan's constant exposure, he knew how he should deal with it. Cheng Xinghe took off his headphones as if he had been poked in the sore spot and whispered to Liao Hongxing, "What the hell do you mean?" "Nothing. I just feel like you seem to be falling behind, and you don't even have the courage to fight me again." Cheng Xinghe sneered, "Then I suggest you find someone to fight with first before coming to me. You like to take advantage of others." "Don't tell me. I did just fight with someone, so you don't dare to come?" "Come." Then Cheng Xinghe didn't waste any words, turned around and walked back to the room and started the simulation device. However, more than an hour later, Cheng Xinghe climbed out of the simulation device with an extremely dark face and opened the door. After slamming the door open, he said to Liao Hongxing outside, "The last game in your simulated battle record was the day before yesterday." Cheng Xinghe himself had just fought with someone, and his mental state could be said to be exhausted. But Liao Hongxing's mental state was different. Of course, his final victory was not easy. But at this time, his face was full of mockery, and he said in an extremely deliberate tone, "Oh, maybe the equipment is broken? Haven't you learned that all is fair in war?" Cheng Xinghe looked completely crazy to Liao Hongxing at this time. After all, he lost 2 games in a row, was ridiculed continuously, and was tricked by him with a trick. It would be strange if he didn't get crazy. Cheng Xinghe also said a sentence as he wished, "One more game. Are you worthy of fighting me when you are defeated?" As soon as Liao Hongxing said this, he saw the anger on Cheng Xinghe's face that was suppressed to the point of twisting. However, he still took advantage of Cheng Xinghe's anger and said before he ran away, "You can fight. What should we bet on?" "What bet?" "If you win, I will bow and apologize to you in front of the whole school during morning exercises. If you lose, is it okay for you to write down your previous defeat and post it on the school bulletin board? I don't know what happened specifically yet." "Okay." Cheng Xinghe agreed decisively. Anyway, if he loses, it's nothing more than posting the part that can be said about the fight with Chen Ming. And Chen Ming is a level 5 psychic. He once lost to a current level 5 psychic, and it was a loss that was not considered a terrible defeat. It was nothing, not shameful at all. He turned around and returned to the room behind him again. But Liao Hongxing suddenly said, "By the way." Cheng Xinghe stopped moving and turned around to ask, "What?" Liao Hongxing looked like he was thinking about something. "How did you come back after being captured? Who told me that you seem to have sold your own sister to someone else in exchange for your life?" All the expressions on Cheng Xinghe's face disappeared instantly. He said nothing but turned around and punched Liao Hongxing. Liao Hongxing reacted and blocked it, but Cheng Xinghe didn't hold back at all. Another punch hit him completely in the abdomen. Liao Hongxing wanted to resist, but Cheng Xinghe's knee hit his lower abdomen. When he was hunched in pain, Cheng Xinghe's third punch hit his chin from bottom to top. The violent impact knocked Liao Hongxing unconscious, and he fell to the ground, unconscious. Cheng Xinghe kicked Liao Hongxing, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, and cursed, "Idiot." Although Liao Hongxing was a head taller than Cheng Xinghe was better at fighting. The muffled sound of fists hitting flesh in the corridor was very familiar to the military academy students in other rooms, and a group of people were immediately attracted. Following closely behind were the teachers who received the news from the monitoring room. Several teachers came out from nowhere and immediately controlled Cheng Xinghe, the only one still standing at the scene. The surveillance footage just now was quite clear. The verbal conflict turned into a physical conflict, and confinement was absolutely necessary. Just after Chang Xinghe was taken away by the two teachers, the medical staff who arrived soon also immediately rescued Liao Hongxing on the ground. However, Chang Xinghe only punched him in the chin, causing him to faint for a short time. Liao Hongxing immediately climbed up with the help of others. He wiped the blood from his lips that had just been bitten by his teeth, stared at Chang Xinghe's back, and laughed disdainfully. The teacher who stayed to disperse the onlookers heard his voice and immediately pointed at him and said, "Come with me later and explain what you are doing." Got it. Chang Xinghe had been taken out of the computer room by the teacher and was about to be taken to the confinement room. And just after he came out, he found that it seemed that it was the end of get out of class outside the computer room, and there were quite a few people pointing at him from a distance. He could hear people discussing what happened in the computer room from a distance. And of course, the fight between him and Liao Hongxing soon spread. Fighting is definitely prohibited in school. However, fighting in private is not reported to each other, and no one will report it. It was just because Chang Xinghe and Liao Hongxing had just fought in the corridor, which had a huge impact, so the teacher was attracted. Of course, as the news that Chang Xinghe was arrested for fighting spread, the reason why Chang Xinghe fought was also spread. It was just that when the news was spread, it was cut off and modified, and it became that Chang Xinghe lost the simulated battle with others and chose physical PK in a rage. Of course, this is actually nothing. After all, it is a military school. After playing too many simulated battles, many people have indeed fought back in offline PK. This kind of thing is usually regarded as a joke for 2 or 3 days. But along with this reason, there was another piece of news. That was the news that Chang Xinghe was captured. For some reason, this news also spread quickly among the crowd. There have been rumors that Chang Xinghe was angry because he was poked in the sore spot, so he beat Liao Hongxing back. Chang Xinghe listened to all this and kept it in his heart, but he lowered his head and didn't say anything. Even though the teacher was parading him around like a parade, he didn't feel uncomfortable. Until he heard someone spreading the rumor that Liao Hongxing said he sold his sister. Chang Xinghe raised his head and looked at the crowd. Even in the noisy crowd, he easily locked onto the people who spread the rumor first. He memorized the appearance of these people and lowered his head again. Although this news was pure fake news in the eyes of people with brains. But as a brother, his anger would not decrease when he heard this news. And more importantly, this rumor came at this time. It's not like he didn't know about Chang Xinghe and Chen Ming, and it's not like he couldn't see Bai Quan's thoughts. He had no opinion on Chen Ming and Chang Xinghe's affairs, but supported them. His situation was better than Chang Xinghe's, but not much better, so he could understand Chang Xinghe's difficulties. He had seen in the simulation that Chang Xinghe had already considered Chen Ming as a potential marriage partner. So even if he captured Chang Xinghe in the simulation, he was only excited for the first 2 days, and basically did not act up in front of his sister afterwards, giving Chen Ming and Chang Xinghe enough opportunities to be alone together. And Chen Ming was definitely a capable person in his eyes. After all, Chen Ming was able to chat and laugh with Bai Quan before, and was a person of a generation older than him in terms of status. His character was also checked by Bai Quan, so there was definitely no problem. Even he was very happy to see the psychic who had conflicts with him before turn hostility into friendship. Of course, Chang Xinghe had completely resolved his conflict with Chen Ming by organizing a simulated battle with him and putting him and Chen Ming together. But now someone brought up the old matter again, and even went so far as to fabricate new rumors, which was definitely a problem. He could feel that today's incident was very wrong, and it was very targeted. Now he just wanted to take this opportunity to tell Bai Quan or Chang Xinghe. But his terminal had just been confiscated, and it seemed that he would have to stay in the confinement room for 2 hours, waiting for the result from Liao Hongxing. After all, it was Liao Hongxing who slandered him first, so he shouldn't stay in the confinement room for too long. But for some reason, before Chang Xinghe entered the confinement room, he had a bad feeling. 2 hours later, Chen Ming and Chang Xinghe returned to the shuttle and were about to return to school. Chang Xinghe's face was full of gentle smiles. She had long known that she didn't have many choices in her life. Her life and her marriage were bound to be accompanied by many exchanges of interests. And among the countless interests, Chen Ming was the one who was still the best after giving up all the perspectives of interests. She was ready. Although she knew that her relationship with Chen Ming was at most in the dating stage, and it was not yet time to talk about marriage. But she was already very satisfied to have such a relationship foundation. Because Chen Ming was willing to accompany her to do things that others thought were bad, such as playing games. In the previous simulation, Chen Ming was obviously a person who could treat research as entertainment and could invest a lot of time in research, but he would occasionally talk to her about games. At the end of the teaching every day, Chen Ming could also take time to play with her for a while. She didn't have any more requirements to have such a person to accompany her. And there was another point, that is, when she went out just now, she asked Chen Ming about his attitude towards her going to the battlefield. Cheng Xinghai was also a very strong person in his bones. Otherwise, she actually had many opportunities to rely on her identity to make Bai Quan agree to the marriage request that had come before and live a rich life at her fingertips. But she didn't. Instead, she continued to study in the military academy. She had completed all the credits for her major in her junior year. She also fought in several small-scale battlefields, made military achievements, and obtained the rank of lieutenant. She wanted to climb up by herself. But if she wanted to climb up, it would mean that she would lose many rights that women have. Among the candidates she could marry, very few, or almost none, would allow her to continue to fight on the battlefield after marriage. If she married someone else casually, her final outcome would most likely be to stay at home to take care of her husband and children. She could only choose one between the battlefield and the family. She didn't want to leave the battlefield, to leave this path that could make her powerful. But she didn't want to die alone. So even after agreeing to Chen Ming's side, she was actually very nervous. But just now, Chen Ming made it clear that he didn't mind this. And he also gave her something. A bracelet that exuded spiritual energy fluctuations. The color was close to pure white and looked like metal. But some places feel like some kind of shell when touched, like a mixture of two materials. In the previous deep simulation, Chen Ming also gave her a bracelet. But the previous bracelet was used by Chen Ming to restrict her. And this one now is used to protect her. Cheng Xinghai's fingertips rubbed the bracelet for a while, and then quietly moved to Chen Ming in the driver's seat next to him, and slowly held Chen Ming's hand. The shuttle returned to the school again. Just landed in the parking lot. A girl hurriedly ran to the shuttle at the edge of the parking lot. Her eyes stayed on Chen Ming at the edge of the open shuttle door for a moment, and then turned to Cheng Xinghai. She easily saw that Cheng Xinghai had the same bracelet on his wrist as Chen Ming's, but she didn't dwell on it, and immediately said to Cheng Xinghai, "Xinghai, you are back at last." Seeing by someone she knew, Cheng Xinghai's face flushed slightly, and she quietly hid the hand she and Chen Ming held together behind her. After shaking her hand vigorously, she let go, jumped off the shuttle, and went to meet the girl. Chen Ming quietly put his hands behind his back and shook them. It can only be said that today he saw the side of Cheng Xinghai as a girl. But he forgot the scene in the simulation where he was almost kicked in the head by Cheng Xinghai. The power in Cheng Xinghai is far beyond that of ordinary people. It should be the effect of her developing the brain with her own spiritual power. And Chen Ming's prosthesis was made according to Chen Ming's own physical fitness. So he can't compare with Cheng Xinghai in physical strength. Chen Ming was thinking about something else in his mind, and his eyes looked at Cheng Xinghai pretending to be calm and asked the girl, "What's wrong?" "Your brother may be arrested. He seems to have beaten someone to death." The smile on Cheng Xinghai's face disappeared. She was still very happy because she had decided her future. But as soon as she came back, she heard this shocking news. Chen Ming was about to say goodbye to Cheng Xinghai and leave, because he still had to look for Bai Quan and Higu. But after hearing this, he immediately jumped off the shuttle with Cheng Xinghai. "What's going on?" The girl looked at Chen Ming, as if she had thought of something, and swallowed nervously. It's on the school forum. You can see it for yourself." She turned around immediately and left here in a hurry. And Cheng Xinghai had taken out the terminal, opened the school forum managed by students, and saw the whole process of what happened 2 hours ago. And the status of the person named Liao Hongsheng who was beaten by Cheng Xinghai just updated about 10 minutes ago. He had been sent to the hospital at this time, diagnosed with severe concussion, brain displacement, and skull fragments pierced into the sea. He was lying in the intensive care unit and could die at any time. Of course, he and Cheng Xinghai also saw the fake news that was spread on the forum. This also knows why Cheng Xinghai beat people to such an extent. Chen Ming was a little speechless at this time. Because this kind of thing is really not worth seeing, it is not a mainstream thing, and it can be easily solved. But the key is, why did Cheng Xinghai beat people to such an extent? The rumor monger could just be beaten. How could he accidentally beat someone to death? Chen Ming knows Cheng Xinghai well, and he doesn't believe that Cheng Xinghai would get so angry. As long as the reason is figured out, basically know what happened. To be honest, Chen Ming's first reaction at the beginning was that it was just a small fight between students. But he thought about it carefully and found that the situation was not right. Cheng Xinghai had just got into trouble when he came here. It didn't happen earlier or later, but now. Such a coincidence. It seems that there is something wrong. It's better to pay a little attention to it. Anyway, if there is a problem, investigate it thoroughly. If there is no problem, just treat it as finding something to do. No matter what, Cheng Xinghai is Cheng Xinghai's brother and Chen Ming's nominal brother-in-law. The conflict between them has been resolved long ago, and he has to help out both emotionally and logically. Cheng Xinghai's eyes gradually became colder. She pulled Chen Ming's wrist and walked towards a direction in the school. Where are you going? The detention room. I saw on the forum that Xinghai seemed to be taken to the detention room by the teacher. I want to find him to confirm what happened. Cheng Xinghai wanted to see Cheng Xinghai in a hurry. But Chen Ming felt that finding Cheng Xinghai was not the first priority. The first priority should be to find the person Cheng Xinghai beat. Because Chen Ming always believed that based on his performance when he communicated with Cheng Xinghai in the simulation last time, he would not beat someone to that extent directly because of the current rumors on the forum. This rumor is just a rumor, and it is nothing. On the contrary, why was Liao Hongxing's injury so serious? Is it really that serious? These two questions are the key. However, Cheng Xinghai should also be able to get some clues to find people, so it's okay to go there. Chen Ming followed Cheng Xinghai. The location of the confinement room is also in the corner of the school, and it is also one of the school's backup guard rooms. According to Cheng Xinghai's explanation, the backup guard room here is usually not open to the public and is basically used as a confinement room. If there is anything inside the school, they will generally go to a fully functional police station near the main entrance of the school. However, it also has almost all the functions of a normal police station except for external reception. This surprised Chen Ming a little. Of course, the surprise is not the function of this guard room, but that there is a police station here. He is now at the headquarters of the 14th Corps, and there is such a place. But if you think about it carefully, there is no problem. After all, the headquarters is not a military base, but a complete comprehensive colony. The powers of the army and the powers of the local administrative department should be appropriately separated. In fact, before coming, Chen Ming wanted to confirm whether Cheng Xinghai would not be here. After all, there was news on the forum that the person beaten by Cheng Xinghai had a broken skull and could die at any time. This means that the situation has escalated from physical conflict to bloody conflict, and Cheng Xinghai may no longer be in the confinement room. But since Cheng Xinghai said that this guard room has all the functions it should have, it must also have interrogation rooms and the like. Cheng Xinghai may still be here. So Chen Ming didn't say much. Soon, Cheng Xinghai took Chen Ming to the destination. It was called a guard room, but Chen Ming saw a two-story building from a distance. It was obvious that there was more than one room here, and it was not a room at all, but at least a police station. At this time, in the hall of the guard room, there was a young-looking person who should be a student sitting on duty. When Chen Ming pushed the door in, he looked up. But he only saw Chen Ming, not Cheng Xinghai, who was blocked by Chen Ming. So he lowered his head again, waved to Chen Ming and said, "This place is not open to the public. Please go out. I'll find someone." Who? Cheng Xinghai. The expression of the student who was lowering his head changed slightly. He immediately raised his head and saw Cheng Xinghai, who followed Chen Ming in. His expression changed more obviously for a while. Chen Ming came to him in a few steps and asked the person sitting behind the front desk condescendingly, "Is he here? He can't see anyone during his confinement." Is he still in confinement? The student sitting on duty hummed twice in an ambiguous voice, and it was not known whether it was an answer to Chen Ming's question. Even family members can't meet? This, in principle, it's not possible. Please understand. Chen Ming glanced at the depths of the guard room. He was eager to use his psychic power, but the psychic fluctuation that had locked him long ago was still locking him. When he was building the shuttle just now, the psychic fluctuation was briefly active. Although it was okay at the time, he is now in school and in the school's guard room. Once he uses his psychic power, he will definitely be noticed by the psychic. It is not easy for him to use psychic power to probe indirectly. Chen Ming could only turn back to Chen Xinghai and ask, will his belongings be confiscated when he is in solitary confinement? Yes. After receiving a positive answer, Chen Ming turned to the student again and asked, what about his things? The student looked embarrassed. This? Question mark. Solitary confinement is solitary confinement, but the belongings of the people in solitary confinement are not well preserved? Is this considered dereliction of duty? Faced with Chen Ming's questioning, the student's lips moved and he could not say a word. Chen Ming also wanted to see if Chang Xinghe would leave any records on the terminal, but it seemed hopeless. Where is the person on duty here? You can't let a student like you stay in the guard room all the time, right? The student's voice became softer and softer. The teachers just went in. Let me stay here for a while. Has the interrogation already begun? Isn't that right? Chen Ming is now standing in the hall of the guard room. The psychic's perception ability allows him to clearly hear the sounds of the entire building. Although he can't hear the breathing, if someone is talking, he will definitely hear it. Chen Ming feels more and more that something is wrong. Chang Xinghe has just been locked up for less than 2 hours, and the only student who seems to know nothing is left in the lockup room, watching the door? This is unreasonable. Chen Ming was too lazy to talk nonsense with this student, so he simply took something out of his pocket and slapped it on the table. This, can I see someone? The thing Chen Ming slapped on the table was a military rank badge at the level of a major colonel. It's not a colonel because although Bai Quan had previously helped Chen Ming get an identity, he was an external tactical instructor, equivalent to a colonel. But after Chen Ming officially joined, he was promoted to the rank of colonel for his important contributions in scientific research twice in less than a month. This is the highest military rank he can get at present. The next level is the general level. It is impossible to be promoted to the general level without staying in the 14th Corps for a few years. But the rank of colonel is enough for a student. If it was a teacher or some other old-timer sitting here, Chen Ming would definitely not use his military rank badge to pressure others with his status, because it would not work. Rules are rules. Chen Ming has to abide by the rules even if he is a general. He can't see people. But the person sitting in front of him is just an ordinary student. And obviously the student in front of him knows the headquarters of the 14th Corps. No one dares to forge such things. He is sure that what Chen Ming is taking out now is the real thing. Chen Ming has seen his calves shaking. Chen Ming is a person who has survived a lot of battlefields. Even if it is a prosthesis, the pressure he brings to students who are still in school when he is serious is also huge. The student's forehead was sweating. After repeatedly confirming what Chen Ming had put on the table, he finally couldn't bear it anymore. I'll take you in. He stood up and walked out of the front desk with a bunch of keys and took Chen Ming and Chang Xinghai to the back. However, when the three of them came to the confinement room, it was empty. Chang Xinghe was not there. What's going on? The student who pushed open the door of the confinement room at the front said in great panic, I don't know, maybe the person was taken away by the police just now. A teacher told me not to let anyone come to the back and to drive everyone away, especially those who want to see Chang Xinghe. The teacher said that they were all reporters and asked me not to let them in. But I heard a lot of noise here later. The student's tone began to become unconfident. He actually let it slip. He must have seen the police take the person away with his own eyes. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that he was taken away by the police right away. But Chen Ming was too lazy to argue with him about this matter at this time, and asked, which police station? The student hurriedly replied, I really don't know. I have been in the front and don't know what happened in the back. I just guessed. You think that person was beaten like that? So he must be sent to the police station. Then why was he sent to the detention room at the beginning? If there is a fight, he must be sent here. That's the rule. Why not send him directly to the police station? Why didn't you see that the injury was so serious at the beginning? Instead, he was sent here first and then to the police station? I don't know. Chen Ming didn't ask the question that he couldn't answer for a second time and continued with the next question. Who saw? He did not see it. There was no one else. All of them heard that Cheng Xinghe was standing there, the other was lying there, and then someone called the police. I heard a noisy sound in the back of more than an hour, and then the teacher came out to make things with me. He went to the place where he went and should be taken away at that time. The guard room can see that there are database backups here, but there must be a school administrator permissions to be transferred. I don't have this permissions and I can't show you. He heard that Chen Ming wanted to use Lingning subconsciously, but he immediately remembered that the spiritual fluctuation of his spiritual fluctuations. There are really restrictions in the army headquarters. Normally, I can handle things directly by adjusting my psychic power, but I have to do it step by step in the normal way. It's really troublesome, but there is no other way. On the territory of the army, I have to follow the rules of the army. Anyway, it seems that someone in the school has made a set of silky little combos and sent Cheng Xinghe, who could have been released in a few hours of confinement, to the police station as if they were going to put a case on him. The specific police station can only be found one by one. Without the assistance of psychic power, things can only be done through formal means. But fortunately, Chen Ming has another choice. He took out the terminal directly and called by Quan. Cheng Xinghe immediately came to Chen Ming's side and whispered, "In addition to contacting Uncle Bai, I feel that I have to find the police station where Xinghe is imprisoned and the hospital where Liao Hongxing lives. Find them before I can do the following things." Yeah. Chen Ming responded and waited for the call to be connected. However, a minute later, a busy tone sounded on his terminal. Bai Quan couldn't be reached, and it was unknown whether he was in class or busy with other things. The result was the same when he called again. Cheng Xinghe also made a call with his own terminal, but he couldn't get through either. She suddenly asked Chen Ming with some concern, "Could this be related?" "I don't think so. Even if someone wants to make trouble, it can't affect Bai Quan now. It should be that he has something wrong." Although Chen Ming said it should be, his tone was very certain. Cheng Xinghe chose to believe him. At this time, in a teaching building in the teaching park of the military base, Bai Quan, who was learning tactics against the mechanical race from a retired old general specially found by the Legion, suddenly vibrated on his body. Bai Quan's face changed, and he immediately took out the terminal given by Chen Ming. He set the ordinary terminal to mute during class. After all, the old general who taught him a private lesson had to maintain some necessary respect. Moreover, because the old admiral was not in good health, the time he could teach was not fixed every day. Bai Quan had mentioned this to Chen Ming before. So if Chen Ming could not contact him at ordinary times, he would usually choose to call him at another time. Since Chen Ming chose to contact him with a special terminal, something must have happened. Bai Quan opened the terminal and looked down to see a series of things that had just happened written by Chen Ming on the notepad of this terminal. His expression was quite serious at first, but soon calmed down. He didn't know the news. But other people in the headquarters couldn't have been unaware of it. Even if he was in class now, there were many people who had many ways to pass the news to him. The only one who could prevent the news from flowing to him was his old boss. In other words, the faction behind him must have started to take action, and he didn't need to worry too much. So he directly gave Chen Ming a contact method and asked Chen Ming to contact the people in their faction. It was also time for Chen Ming to contact other people in his faction in the headquarters. In the message Chen Ming sent to him, he complained that he was restricted everywhere in the headquarters, but at the same time, there would certainly be other more convenient places. For example, what he was going to give to Chen Ming now, the connections. At this time, Chen Ming had already walked out of the guard room with Cheng Xinghe and was heading to the parking lot. Chen Ming got Bai Quan's reply on the current situation, and he had a rough idea in his mind. This matter would definitely not develop in the worst direction. He just had to do what he should do. He then glanced at Cheng Xinghe, who was thinking about something. "What do you think?" Chen Ming shook his head slightly and said, I'm not sure. I feel there are many places to start, but I'm not sure which one is the most suitable to start. So I want to ask what you think? Chen Ming didn't necessarily say that he would solve this problem by himself. This is good. Do what you are capable of doing by yourself, and notify capable people to do things you are not capable of doing as soon as possible. This is the most appropriate approach. As for the question about Chen Ming answered quickly. My idea is very simple. Take Chen away from the police station, send the slanderer to prison, completely erase the rumors, and find out the mastermind behind the scenes. At the same time, in an online conference room of the 14th Corps Headquarters Network, Number 2 asked Number 1. Chen has been taken to the police station. What's next? Didn't I say, don't do anything? Think about what our purpose is. Without waiting for Number 2 to answer, Number 1 said, it is based on the conflict between Chen and Chen Ming, and it is to provoke the relationship between Chen and Chen Ming. Take the opportunity to let the conflict between Chen Ming and Chen erupt, and rely on the relationship between Chen and Chen to destroy the marriage. Simple provocation is just the beginning. Chen was raised by Baiquan anyway, and his brain is not too bad. It is impossible for him to get so excited as to have a conflict with Chen Ming because of the provocation. He knows who is the troublemaker. It's us. So how can we find a way to create a conflict? Although this is Number 1's question, he didn't rush to continue, but waited for someone to make some suggestions. Number 9 asked, really convict Chen? Number 1 responded, it's true that it can be convicted, but it doesn't make much sense. If there is no real death, there is absolutely no way to convict someone. The people on Baichuan's side are not fools who can't see what we are doing. But if there is a real death, the supervision department will come down. Number 9 spread his hands and didn't say anything more. Others also proposed some ideas, but they were all refuted by Number 1. After confirming that no one had new ideas, he said, all direct means are unlikely to really have enough effect, so we have to use some indirect means. We need to instill in Chen the feeling that he encountered what he encountered because of Chen Ming. How to instill it? Just like I said just now, don't do anything. Ignore Chen the whole time. Just leave him there. He is nothing. He is just a tool to target Chen Ming. Disdain him, ignore him, make him feel that he is not respected, not valued, and even not regarded as a real person. Let him know that we are not targeting him. Everything he did was aimed at Chen Ming. Only in this way can Chen feel annoyed with Chen Ming, even though he knows that we are the ones doing the work. We have to give him a feeling that he did nothing and did nothing wrong. All the mistakes are because of Chen Ming's existence. Of course, it's not like we really do nothing. Remember to send 2 people to talk to him occasionally to talk more about Chen Ming, as long as you don't talk about Chen himself. Also, remember to delay for a while. Young people always want to write something when they are free. Let him be free for a while. After a long time, he will think enough. Just after a brief discussion in the online conference room, Chen was still locked up in the interrogation room of the police station. He had been locked up for a while. However, no one came to find him. It was as if everyone had ignored him. Except for occasionally hearing people outside talking about Chen Ming, he could not hear anything. The anxiety in his heart was gradually growing. At the same time, Chen Ming and Chen had boarded the shuttle. After the shuttle set sail, Chen had already had a rough idea. She said to Chen Ming, it shouldn't be difficult to get Xinghe out of the police station. Then if the situation is true, then there is no need to send the slanderer to prison. He is almost dead, so there is no need to send him to prison. If the situation is not true, that's another matter. Those rumors. Chen Xinghe's face flushed. It's also easy to solve. The key is to find the person behind the scenes. I know which faction Liao Hongxing belongs to, but I don't think it's necessarily someone from his faction who did it. No one should involve their faction so openly. We have to start with the people around him. Chen Xinghe's idea is similar to what Chen Ming just thought. After she finished speaking, Chen Ming immediately handed over his terminal. This is Liao Hongxing's information. Chen Xinghe saw the content on the terminal, but she did not take the terminal immediately. Instead, She blinked uncertainly and asked with a hint of confusion, "Where did this come from?" "Someone in the faction gave it to me." "Which faction?" "Our faction." Cheng Xinghai suddenly fell silent. Chen Ming sensed something from Cheng Xinghai's silence and asked, "Didn't you think of contacting people in the faction just now? Those uncles and aunts basically treat me as a child. Even if I have been on the battlefield, it's the same." There was a trace of sadness and loneliness in Cheng Xinghai's eyes that was not taken seriously. Chen Ming put down the terminal, stretched out his hand and pressed on her clenched fist on her knees and said, "But I won't." Cheng Xinghai pursed her lips, and the lost expression gradually disappeared. "Yeah." She grabbed Chen Ming's hand, picked up the terminal at the same time, and studied the information on it. Chen Ming reminded from the side, "We still don't know whether Liao Hongxing is dead or not, so let's just assume he is really dead first. But we can now be sure that Xinghe could not have beaten someone to death because he was in the confinement room before, which means that Liao Hongxing's condition was definitely not that serious at the time. It must have been after Xinghe was taken to the confinement room that something went wrong. The teacher who sent him away, the doctor in the infirmary, and the doctor in the hospital can all go and check. We need to find out what caused him to become like that. If we figure this out, we can figure out all the situations. But it will take a bit of time with so many people. So we should go find Cheng Xinghe first. His location has been determined."
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.